Good morning. This is the Citrus County Planning and Development Commission public hearing for December 15th, 2022. If you'd like to join us at this time, I invite you to please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear Lord, please give us the grace to be understanding, patient, and tolerant. With these attributes, we can conduct our work in a manner which will be pleasing to Thee, our county, and its residents. In the Lord's name, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Before we do the roll call, we have a new member coming on. Cheryl, if you could swear in our new member, please.
Yes, sir.
We'll bring Mr. Gilbert up here as our new alternate member for PDC, just appointed by the Board of County Commissioners.
Good morning, Mr. Gilbert.
Hi, paid photographer.
If you'll repeat after me, I do solemnly swear that I will support, protect, and defend the Constitution and government of the United States and of the state of Florida, that I am duly qualified to hold office under the Constitution of the state, and that I will well and faithfully perform the duties of the Planning and Development Commission on which I am now about to enter. Congratulations, we have a new alternate.
Thank you.
Congratulations and welcome on board.
What's his name?
Tim Gilbert.
Tim Gilbert.
We will see him when we need an alternate member, so we're in good hands with him and Ms. Scragg now. Thank you.
And if we could have the roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Good morning and thank you.
We have the following Planning and Development Commission members present this morning. Robert Bass, Chair. Stacy Worthington, First Vice Chair. James Royce, Second Vice Chair. Richard Barnes. David Bramblett. Michael Facemeyer. Carol Scragg, Alternate. And Chuck Dixon, School Board Representative.
Thank you. If any person decides to appeal any decision made by the Commission with respect to any matter considered at this hearing, he or she will need a record of the proceedings, and for such purpose, he or she may need to ensure that a verbatim record of the proceedings is made, which record includes testimony and evidence upon which the appeal is to be based. During public input portions of the meeting, individuals are given 3 minutes, representatives of the organization are given 5 minutes. When anyone wishing to speak comes to the podium, please complete a yellow form to hand to the recording secretary. Please print your name, address, and the number of the application for which you are speaking on the form. The yellow forms can be found by the podium at the door. If representing an organization, a letter of authorization must accompany the speaker. Comments will be limited to the topic being heard. Please state your name, spell your last name, and give your address for the tape record. Excuse me. This time, it's an opportunity for the public to come forward and speak on any topic other than the 3 that are on the agenda today. Seeing none, we have no minutes to approve. Staff announcements.
No announcements at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Our county attorney for ex parte communications.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
With regard to CPA AA PUD-22-17 and CPA AA PUD-22-18 and PUD-22-09, have you had any ex parte communications? And we'll start with Commissioner Dixon.
I've had a little bit of discussion in the past about, but I haven't had any since they became applications.
Thank you.
Site visit on all?
Site visit on all.
None.
None. Site visit.
Site visits on all?
Site visits on all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. At this time, if we could have an introduction on CPAA PUD 22-17.
Thank you, sir. Yes, for
Thank
the
you.
Law Office of Clark A. Stillwell for SKC Homosassa Campground LLC, Patrick Sean Driss, and Christopher D. Lynn Jr. I'm sorry. here. This request is to change 1.5 acres from low intensity coastal and lakes to coastal and lakes commercial and establish a PUD for non-residential uses, including restaurant and cabins with off-site parking. Aerial view of the subject properties. View of the restaurant and cabins site from West Miss Maggie Drive. View of the off-site parking from West Miss Maggie Drive. Looking from the restaurant cabin site to the off-site parking. Looking from the off-site parking to the restaurant's cabin site. Looking east on West Miss Maggie Drive. Looking south on West Miss Maggie Drive. The adjacent parcel to the south. The adjacent parcel to the east. And the master plan submitted by the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If the applicant would like to come forward, please.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Clark Stillwell. My professional address is 320 South Highway 41, the Brandon Bank Building in Inverness, Florida, and I represent the owner, SKC Homosassa Campground, LLC. This is a three-part application. The first part is on the off-site parking site. There's an old PUD 09-20, which was approved for cabins, never built, expired after 3 years, and we're going to essentially ask you to repeal that. It's a housekeeping idea. The second part of the application is a GFLUME LDC Atlas Map Amendment on 0.645 acres from Coastal Lakes to Coastal Lakes Commercial. This is a cutout from the larger parcel, the RV park, which is 3.6 acres. The PUD is an overlay on two parcels. It is specifically to allow that building that you saw, 2,400 square feet in the photos, to be converted from no use to a restaurant use. And to accommodate that, the client has secured the out parcel lot, number 1183871. It is vacant. It is already Coastal Lakes Commercial, and he intends to put on 31 parking spaces, paved aisles, drainage, and grass parking. Specifically, the grass parking is intended to preserve the nature of the neighborhood. The existing campground use is long-term. You have Mr. Robert Strickland's letter in your backup. The Strickland family, as he points out, has lived in Chesapeake for 110 years or something like that. You may remember Mr. Baldy Strickland, part of the Strickland family, was one of Citrus County's first elected state representatives to the state legislature. The park is vested for 6 cabins, 5 mobile homes, 20 RV spaces, a boat ramp, and then this building of 2,400 square feet. As Mr. Strickland points out, up until the early 80s, the 2,400 square feet building was previously a restaurant. The owner then, for whatever reason, let the licenses expire. In 1990, the site was designated Coastal and Lakes on both the Flume and Atlas map. The Coastal and Lakes commercial piece has been that way for a long time, and it's been vacant. Both sites have central utilities. There's no environmental constraints, and the flood elevation is AEBFE 11. Now, the intent here is that the modifications to this 2,400 square foot building will be less than 50% of the fair market value of the building and won't need to comply with FEMA regulations. If it turns out that that in fact cannot be met, then either they're going to come back to you for a change in use, or they're going to have to accommodate FEMA and elevate. Again, this is a vested RV park. In your report, Mr. Hockdale has given you a really long history of this site, And the key component in the report on page 2 is the 2005 reference. Ms. Katu and I know this quite well. In 2005, the county created what they call the RVP Land Use District. And they went through the whole county, and all of the existing mobile home parks were designated into the mobile home district, and the RV parks were designated into the RVP district. They went to the owner and said, we're going to designate you RVP, and for whatever reason, she refused, which was a major mistake. And then you can see 2022, I remember coming back and looking at this site before it was acquired by my client, and we had this discussion, and Mrs. Katu and I both concluded that it should have been designated RVP in 2005. So it's been a non-conforming vested use ever since. All right. There are no concurrency issues per the letters in your file. The ISR on the 3.6 acre site and the map change is not changing, and the parking will have its own DRA pursuant to a water management permit. You want to go to the PowerPoint now? Drive the bus. I like that one. Go ahead.
You have the clicker up there?
I do.
Okay.
You know how I
See if
am
it
with
works.
this. Aerial photo.
Oh, he did it.
Thank you. Aerial photograph. You can see the existing park, the surrounding land uses. They're what I would call eclectic. A lot of mobile homes, a lot of single-family residential, commercial, and oriented toward tourism. This is the cutout survey of the area to be rezoned, the 0.65 acres survey. Shows the also the remaining RV park, which remains unchanged. All right, this is the two areas that we're doing in the rezoning. This is the current G flume. You can see the parking piece is already Coastal and Lakes commercial. This is the LDC Atlas map. You can see, again, a lot of eclectic type uses. You got Coastal and Lakes mobile homes, single family, you got vested commercial uses along County Road 480. Another map of the proposed parking, and this has the existing uses. It shows the vested sites. You can see northeast corner, there's a existing RV park for 10 units, and commercial on the parcel immediately to what I'm going to call the south of the vacant parking. That's a motel, and it's vested but zoned just CL. All right, another map of the same thing. Floodplain map, and here's your site plan. And this is the interior of the building, as indicated by Mr. Strickland, and it's been a restaurant previously for a long, long time in that area. As you saw from the aerial photographs and the land use maps in your backup material, the area is truly mixed. There's a history of tourism in the area. The traffic, if you're interested, from this restaurant basically would be about 4 trips per day, weekday, for every seat. This is according to the Institute of Traffic Engineers Encyclopedia, and on the weekdays that goes up to 6 trips per day per seat. The parking and the building size is going to define how many seats there are. Also the fire marshal. So we calculated the parking based off of 2,400 square feet of gross leasable area, and pursuant to your code, that's 1 parking space for every 150 square feet. So that's how you got to 31 parking spaces. So whatever the number of seats are, it's going to be capped by the 31 off-site parking spaces. As far as plan consistency, within the application, we cited 3 sections of the economic development element dealing with support for tourism, and this is designed basically to support tourism and the residents in the area. The site plan, the ISR, is 17%. The floor area ratio is 15%. That's 50% less than what's allowed. The engineering division has spoken to the issue of sidewalks, and we understand that, and we're going to have to comply with that. The way that works is you design it, it gets approved, and then you get a right-of-way utilization agreement that's approved by the Board of County Commissioners. The one driveway they speak to in the driveway separation, basically that one small driveway that was shown in the pictures, is going to be history, and there'll be one entrance and one entrance out and in, which I think is a positive. Just dealing with the issue of this use in the west side of the county, and the issue of off-site parking the restaurants. I can think of 3 restaurants in this community that has off-site parking across the street from them. The Vintage in Crystal River, Lollygaggers in Floral City, and Catch 22 in Lecanto also all had off-site parking across the street. As far as restaurants and campgrounds, the most classic example is Turtle Creek Campground in Homosassa. It has a restaurant, a bar, RV, single-family use, and it abuts to one of the higher and better uses in Homosassa for single family. All of those have gotten along famously without issues of compatibility. Finally, if you drive out Ozella Road and look for examples, there are 3 restaurants on Ozella Road. They have open seating, they have music on the weekends, they have good food, and they're right in the middle of residential areas or mixed-use areas, and they've all succeeded, and they've all done so without impact to their neighbors. And this similarly will be that way. It's enclosed dining. There's no dining outside. Certainly not going to have music in this type of small restaurant. My client's here. He's invested in this project and cleaned it up, as you can see from Mr. Strickland's letter. And he just wants to take the next step here. Questions?
Any questions from staff?
Yeah, just one. You addressed most of the questions I was going to ask you. The one thing you said is that this would go from, or it would only be one driveway. Were you referring to the parking lot, or were you referring to the restaurant? Are you taking out one of those drives?
Engineering comments
Right.
indicate there are 2 existing driveways. I'm not going to tell you whether they're permanent or not because they've been there forever. Okay, but the one driveway, dirt, not the main entrance, clearly it will have to be.
Okay, good. That's
Taken out.
what engineering was supporting, that they're very close to each other. I just
Right.
want to make that clear. Okay, thank you. That's all, sir. Thank you.
Any questions from commissioners?
I have a question.
Yes.
What would prevent other people from parking in these 31 dedicated spaces and taking up your parking spaces for your restaurant goers?
Well, all we can do is just put signage up and hope for that. Everyone has that type of issue in downtown Inverness or downtown Crystal River. You just simply say parking restricted to X and hope that people would honor that request.
What's the parking like at the hotel next door? I mean, are people going to abuse that and then, park over there staying at that hotel?
Well, you saw the big wooden wall in the picture between the two. It's going to be hard, yeah.
Yeah, well, you're asking people to walk across the street and around a curve to go to this restaurant. What would prevent them from walking?
Well, all I can tell you is there'll be a sidewalk there, and I'm sure Mr. Dries and the hotel and motel will have a discussion. It's a neighborhood use, and to keep the neighborhood working, they have to work together. I can't prevent people from illegal parking. You can't do that. All we can do is put signs up and ask that they honor it. I mean, frankly, if you were a tourist and you wanted to go to the Springs, you're not going to park here because it's a long walk.
Any other questions from commissioners?
I have a couple.
Yes, Mr. Brandon.
Who's going to maintain the sidewalk once it's put in? How will that work, in your opinion?
Well, the traditional approach is that, again, it's a right-of-way utilization agreement. The right-of-way utilization agreement defines the terms. Traditionally, 3 years maintenance by the developer. At the end of 3 years, it's inspected to determine if it still meets county standards. If not, it's brought up to county standards, and then it's put on the agenda for county commission maintenance. Now, when we get to the county commission, if they want something different beyond that, they certainly have that right.
Okay. And then my second question is regarding the ISR. Staff has indicated site is approximately 47.6 as noted by the applicant. Staff visit confirmed that the existing site is to be estimated over the allowable 50% for the CLC.
We're not changing 1 inch of the existing vested ISR on the 3.6 acre site.
So what's there is already over 50%, and you're saying
It's been there forever, yes.
Okay.
When
No
they
question, no
vested-
further questions.
When they vested the mobile home parks, they vested everything, the site plan, that sort of thing.
Any other questions from commissioners? I have a couple. In where the new parking area is, we have the paved surface now. You are not showing any type of drainage retention area. How do you intend to handle the increase in impervious surface in that parking lot?
Well, it's a given that the increase in the ISR in that piece will require a water management district permit. And that's going to define where it's going to go, but it'll go either on the interior or the perimeter. But it's not a question of not wanting or having to do it. It's just a question of it's going to be defined by the
Okay.
water management district.
Okay. I did not conduct a site visit, so this may be a moot point. Is there street lighting on this segment of West
None.
Miss Maggie Drive?
None to my knowledge.
Has the applicant considered putting a street light in this area? He's now asking his patrons to walk some X distance in the dark, and I don't know if it's something that they would.
Mr. Bass, that's a good idea. We agree with that.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments?
Mr. Dries is here. He's going to just speak briefly, and then we're done.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is
Morning.
Sean Dries. I'm one of the owners of SKC Homosassa Campground LLC. I grew up in Citrus County, had the pleasure of purchasing some property here, and very passionate about this project. We bought it about 2 years ago, and have done extensive cleanup to the area. It was kind of a sad story. This property had slipped away from its prior use to a pretty poor condition. So we've cleaned up the property quite a bit, and like Mr. Stillwell implied, we're trying to do the next phase of opening this restaurant that was previously a restaurant and a good fit for the neighboring community and our campground. But based on the decisions of the previous owner, things had kind of slipped. So we've acquired the offsite parking to accommodate the new parking requirements, and we're just trying to reopen this building that's currently there. So that's kind of that's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to add anything else as far as lighting and sidewalks. We have no opposition to what's needed for safety and to make that seamless in the community. There is no current lighting there, so I think from a community standpoint, maybe that's something that might have some opposition. Just lights and I don't know, but whatever we could do for the safety component of that, I think we would be more than happy to do. As also for the comments about the hotel, we recently acquired that too. So as far as cohabitating with that space, we have staff that monitors parking and things like that. So as far as enforcing who parks where, we have a pretty good pulse on that, and we'll adapt to whatever challenges we have with that to make sure those parking spaces are parked in accordingly. So, but yes, very passionate about this project, and like I said, we're just trying to restore it to its former glory. Essentially, we're not really trying to do anything new or crazy. We're just trying to reopen this restaurant that was once thriving in the community. It doesn't really have any surrounding restaurants. You know, if you're in Chassahowiska, you drive, you know, to Homosassa, Brooksville, or you get food where you can have a cigarette or fast food. So we think it'd be a nice addition to the community having a local restaurant, and it would also serve for tourism as well. So thank you very much.
Any questions for?
I have a question. Can you speak to the staff's note of the applicant? I'm sorry. Site visit confirmed recent improvements done to the subject site and the non-conforming RV park without permits.
So there's two parcels. The RV park, we've made some improvements.
The one to the south, right? That's the one right.
The south, yeah. So, you know, we've repaired some things there. None of those are pertaining to this parcel that we're trying to rezone and that the restaurant's on. And as far as the ISR that you brought up, you know, we had a recent survey that had the ISR calculations, and nothing's been changed since then. And to note, there is a lot of green space behind those cabins too that factors into that total number.
Just one follow-up too.
Absolutely.
The open air entertainment with the stage that I saw out there, was that there? What can you tell me what the story is with that?
So that's on a trailer. That's just a temporary thing. It's not fixed or anything. There's a stage on a trailer. We have the community fishing tournament stuff they use to do the weigh-ins, things like that. So it's not really utilized often. It is there. It has like our logo on it. But
bands and entertainment.
we have had bands there a couple times for like our anniversary and stuff for an hour or two. But
Okay.
nothing consistently.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah,
Yes.
I have one. Mr. Dries, I ran out of time this week. I ran down to do a site visit this morning before getting to the meeting. That's why I was coming in very right on time.
No worries.
My question for you is, where do they park for the existing cabins? I was mainly focusing in on when I was down there looking at the distance between the off-site parking and your location, but where do they park for the existing?
So they park on site now. So there's 4 cabins. We allot one site per cabin. And on our proposed plan, the parcel that has the building and the cabins, there are a few spaces there. I think we have like 6 or 8 spaces plus the off-site. So collectively so the parking there we still have enough for the bar, the restaurant and the
I saw
cabins.
4 spaces. Is that right? Or
4 spaces for.
well, next to the restaurant, there's 4 spaces.
We have a grass area in front of the restaurant that's has parking spaces, and then we have some area on the east side of that parcel too, towards the 4th cabin that we use for parking as well.
The site plan shows parking adjacent on the sides to each of the cabins. one spot to the side of each cabin.
The big open space.
And then the parking Sean just spoke to regarding to the east and west of the existing building. So the cabin, they'll park to the side. We're going to have to use what's in front of the cabins as an aisle for ingress and egress.
And currently, that's currently how we do it. And right now, the vacant lot, if we have extra needs for parking, that's
Well, you're going to
that's
have to have dedicated handicap spaces for
That's
the
on
restaurant.
site plan too, and it's working.
I see it, yeah.
Yeah.
But is that enough too?
Meets code.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Joe?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Joe Hockedale, Principal Planner with Land Development. All right, so This application is, as Mr. Stillwell said, kind of a historied site. What they're trying to do out here, they are going from coastal and lakes to coastal and lakes commercial for the main site. I'm going to call it the main site that has the cabins and the proposed restaurant. And then they're going to establish a plan unit development for both of these parcels to kind of tie them together. The PUD in its entirety is 1.5 acres. And you can see it is all coastal lakes out there, with the exception of Lot 6, which has the expired PUD for the 3 cabins on it, and that's where their off-site parking is proposed. So with this application, this is what it will look like out there as far as the land use. So here's the proposed master plan. Again, you can see the 4 cabins located on the main site down there where the existing building is. They want to reestablish a restaurant in, and then the off-site parking on Lot 6 up there in the top left corner. This site does have a lot of history to it. Mr. Stillwell alluded to that and kind of went through some of it. It was existing in 1981. It had RV spaces, boat slips, cabins, a restaurant, and various other improvements on site that were in operation. In 1986, the restaurant converted from, or the building converted from a restaurant to a private club. And then at some point after that, it just stopped being used and hasn't been used in probably decades. And so again, in 2005, there was a vested rights for the main site where they were vested for 5 mobile homes, 20 RVs, and 6 cabins. The building for the restaurant was not part of that vesting. And so really the applicant is proposing the continued use of those cabins, a reestablishment of the restaurant, and the bathhouse, which you can see right there in the corner, which is currently being used by the non-conforming RV park. And this application does not include anything else with that non-conforming RV park. This is going to be totally separate from that. It is going to have shared access with it, and it is going to have that shared bathhouse. So this is the proposed main site plus the non-conforming RV park around it as it exists right now. And this is the old site plan for the RV park from probably the 80s or early 90s. So here you can see the existing building with one of the cabins in the background. That's the building to be used as a restaurant. And this is the shared access drive that exists right now. So here's another view of some of the cabins, and you can see the RV park in the background. And this is the area located behind those cabins. This is the existing bathhouse. And this is the RV park that's on the south side. This is also the shared driveway. Here you can see the existing boat slips that are part of the non-conforming RV park. And the other 2 cabins you can see there with the bandstand that was mentioned previously. And you can see here the waterfront to the east. This is Lot 6 as it exists right now. This is where the off-site parking is proposed. And this is the adjacent hotel. And so here you can kind of see how the master plan fits in with that whole area. The applicant has a couple deviations being listed. One of them is for buffers. For the most part, the proposal meets the buffer requirements in the LDC, with the 2 exceptions to that are the south and east property lines of the main site where the cabins and restaurant are to be. That requires a type C on the south and east property lines, and they're proposing none, partly because there's some improvements in there right now, I would guess. So with this application, the proposed land use change for this does seem to be appropriate because those 4 cabins have been there, they've been in continuous use, they've been in operation. So converting this to Coastal Lakes commercial to establish and continued use of those cabins seems appropriate. But the proposed intensity by adding the restaurant may not be. So as you can see, this property is adjacent to residential properties. It is kind of ad hoc down there and how things have developed. A lot of it developed a long time ago. So, there is the hotel. There are some existing commercial uses in the area, but around this, it's predominantly residential with that non-conforming RV park. And so by establishing a restaurant down here, especially where they can't meet all the site requirements on site, and they have to go off site, that could cause some compatibility issues in this area, especially since the off-site parking is about 260 feet away on the other side of the street. They do have water and sewer available, so that's good. Stormwater was not addressed as part of this, but as Mr. Stillwell said, that's something they know they're going to have to do. And so looking at this request, the request for the cabins seems appropriate, but the request for the restaurant does not. So staff does have some concerns with that. And we do have public comment. You should have that in your backup.
Any questions for Joe? Very good, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you.
You did so well, they're speechless.
The public portion of the meeting will now be open. If there's anyone present in favor of the application who would like to speak, please come forward to the podium. As a reminder, individuals have 3 minutes to speak and organizations have 5 minutes. When speaking on this application, please address the board. If you have any documentation that you want to be entered into the record, please provide a copy to the recording secretary. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of this application? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Yes, sir. Please step up to the podium.
My name is Brian Maher, and I own the property directly across on what you would call the south end. And they've done a great job, cleaning the place up. It was trashed, and I applaud them for that. The only question that I have is like the water runoff and possible any oils or stuff like that from the road draining down into the canal. There is a culvert that comes directly from the road right into the edge of their property, right into the edge of the canal, right across my house. So I know that you talked about, somebody said something about elevation changes, whether water runoff. You're going to have people parking there. I mean, you already do have some. And any, all the, the extra traffic and stuff like that, whether there's any oils or anything like that on the roads that would wash off down into that culvert, into the canal. So that's the only question that I would have on that type of thing. Other than that, what I've seen is they're doing a hell of a job.
Thank you. If you could fill out a yellow slip and provide it to our recording secretary. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Seeing none, if there's anyone present opposed to the application who would like to speak, please come forward to the podium. If there is, please come forward and make your presentation at this time. Anyone in opposition? Anyone in opposition? Anyone in opposition? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. This time I will bring it back to the board for discussion and potential actions. Anyone have any comments, concerns, issues?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I just want to explain to the applicant, the board, and the public why I take very seriously this application, because there was another restaurant with an extensive history in my district, and it was permitted and it's been operating, but the capacity and the parking don't match. And what's happened is a spillover effect and creating a major safety issue. So that's why it was important that I went down and I took a look at, how far are people going to be walking to the restaurant. Also, what was the speed limit? Speed limit is 25. Chazawiska is, a small town. I don't think there's a safety issue, because on paper, when you first looked at this, I thought this is crazy. But when I went down and saw the proximity of the lot to where the restaurant would be located, it's not as unsafe as I thought it would be. And I think with the proper conditions, I would be in favor of the application with the proper conditions.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioners have any comments or questions? Yes, Ms. Scraggs.
Driving around the neighborhood.
Could you make sure you're up by the mic,
You're gonna
please?
have to pull that closer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Driving around the neighborhood, I saw how different they had single family, they had motels, they had fishing areas, and they did not have very many places to eat. And this just seemed like a perfect place right there with a small restaurant, so that instead of people driving all the way back to find a restaurant, they could have something local. And I think it would help the traffic in the area to have something local instead of constantly going back and forth. So listening to it all, I'm in favor.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted
Yes.
to add also, one other thing that I was thinking about during the presentation is that, you know, when you look at an establishment like this, with an already existing RV park, I imagine most of their business will come from the surrounding community in that RV park. So parking, you know, they're already parked there, they're staying there, you know, so it may not be as much of an issue as I initially thought as well.
Okay. Any other comments? Yes, Commissioner
Just one
Facemeyer.
final question, and this is for staff. We had Mr. Rocker testify that he was supporting the project, but he was concerned about runoff and those types of things, environmental issues. Will those be addressed at permitting? Is that the appropriate time? I mean, I'd like to have Mr. Rocker come away with a good feeling.
Sure, right. We do have a condition in here that says it has to meet the requirements of Chapter 6 and Chapter 7. That's one of those standard ones from engineering, and that addresses stormwater. So yeah, they're going to have to address stormwater, at least for the off-site parking. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, I would just
Yes.
say that with the required conditions and the addition, I like your addition of the lighting over the sidewalk area, that I'm in favor of the application.
Thank you. Any other comments? Just one thing for Joe. Did you discuss the conditions with the applicant, and was he all set with them?
They had a copy of these conditions. Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or concerns?
Just how are we going to word that condition regarding lighting? You guys have any idea?
Ms. Cotu?
Wow, on the fly again.
Attorney Lynn?
Yeah. Street lighting will be provided by the applicant to the satisfaction of the county engineer on Miss Maggie Drive.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
The Planning and Development Commission finds application number CPA-AA-PUD-22-17 consistent with the Citrus County Comprehensive Plan and Citrus County Land Development Code, and that this board recommends approval with conditions of the application to the Board of County Commissioners based upon the evidence and testimony presented and the staff report and conclusions regarding this petition.
We have a first, do we have a second?
I second it.
We have a first from Commissioner Worthington and a second from Commissioner Facemeyer. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay. You guys are very festive.
Oh, thank you.
If we could move on to our next application, please, and have a little intro.
Alrighty, here we are. CPA AAPUD 2218, Chuck Vision for CR 486 LLC. This application is a comprehensive plan amendment and Atlas amendment that also proposes to amend an existing PUD. The site lies on the north side of County Road 486, adjacent to a recently approved rehab site and just south of application PUD 2209 for Amber Ridge. The site contains approximately 55 acres and would change GNC and PSO with a PUD to GNC and HDR with a PUD to allow non-residential and multifamily uses. This is looking east on County Road 486 with the site to the left in this photo. This is looking west on County Road 486. This is the view across 486. The site lies adjacent to the Clear Sky Rehab Facility currently under construction. This is the master plan submitted by the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. If the applicant would like to come forward and make a presentation?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, Chuck Pigeon with Pigeon Adora. Business address 925 Southwest 17th Street, Ocala, Florida. And we're familiar with the site. We'd be glad to tell you more about this site and appreciate your time. And we've had some good conversation with staff, and hopefully that'll culminate into a plan everyone can be proud of. So if we can go to the slides.
I'm sorry, did you have a PowerPoint, sir?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, staff didn't receive a PowerPoint for your application. This says yes.
Yeah, we do have a PowerPoint. It should be in the shared drive, but it is in the packet. Here's the back for us. If it's there, you need to pull it. If not, we'll have to read it on the thumb drive.
Can we access the shared drive in this computer?
No. You'll get it on the thumb drive. You can download it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, go ahead. I apologize, sir. It'll be a minute.
Apologize. Yes, I'll be right
Pretty
back.
sure it's in our
Okay,
packet
sure.
too,
They
though.
have paper copies of it?
Yeah.
I have
Yeah,
a
I
paper
so.
copy.
Or should this can't-
Is it presented by Pigeon Ardura LLC, it says?
Yes.
Got it, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's take a recess.
And you would have the paper copy if you want me to continue.
We do have the paper copy. If you want to move forward with that, you're welcome to it. If you want to wait, we can take a couple minute recess if you
So
want
that'd
to.
be probably best so that the public can see it.
Fine, we'll take,
How about I'll take this time to introduce our new planner. We have a new planner on staff. Ricardo Garcia, please stand up and wave. he goes by Ricky, and he's a landscape architect that's just started, so you'll see him before you eventually. We also have another planner starting on Monday, so we're finally going to have a full staff, which is exciting. So.
wow, that's
I had some
exciting.
good news. I forgot to say that earlier, and I'm sorry. I wasn't ignoring you. I just geared in on the meeting.
Welcome aboard. Any other information?
No, I guess we can take a break. I was hoping to spill some time there, but didn't take very long.
You talk maybe
Eh.
35 seconds?
I can go on and tell you about January meetings.
Sure.
Things are not slowing down at all on our end, which, good or bad, I think it's great. January 5th, you have 3 applications. January 19th, you have 1 application, but it's a PUD. So got a lot coming on. We're scheduling for late February and March right now, and they're still very full. So a lot of development activity, a lot of inquiries.
Awesome. Why don't we try a 5-minute recess and see if that is sufficient to get us up and going? All right, thanks for your patience. We appreciate it. Okay, round 2.
All right, well, thank you. And I do apologize to staff. Normally I give them a PowerPoint.
Yep.
This time I sent them a PDF instead of the PowerPoint, so they didn't realize it was a presentation.
I apologize.
We got it. That's the most
Gotta remember.
important thing.
So we all got a little egg in our face. So thank you very much. Once again, Chuck Pigeon Adora, 925 Southeast 17th Street in Ocala, Florida, representing the Delta Land Group, LLC. And this today, as staff mentioned, it's really a 2-part presentation and zoning. There's a part which is getting changed, 50.5 acres of high-density residential within a GNC current zoned with a PD overlay. And the other portion is no change other than revising the layout of the PUD overlay and defining a little better access points, buffering, the internal road networks, parking, sidewalks, those type of things. So you all are very familiar, but just a little bit different perspective, as if you were flying by in an airplane and wanted to see where this fit in relation to the Walmart and the new proposed Target on the corner, Black Diamond, and the Pine Ridge area. Next slide, please.
I'm sorry, you can use.
Oh, I can do this now.
Yeah, I think so.
Great. Okay, so this is a slightly different master plan. Staff had their comments from the original submittal that staff showed you. We addressed those comments, provided information back, updated a few things based on staff comments, and further evolution of this project. And this is our current submitted master plan. We may come back to that a bit later. So basically the bottom line is 300 apartments as a community facility in itself as a community. Maximum of 630,000 square feet of commercial, if that could ever be achieved. There's shared internal access drives, so we limit the access connections onto the West Noble Bryan Highway. We have a countywide water and sewer utilities, stormwater management, pedestrian access and crossing and internal pedestrian movements, and a bunch of landscaping and buffering. So the focus of this presentation, if you have any questions, would be to go ahead and just show how it's oriented specifically. Let's focus on the apartment area. In the area, we're looking to have a clubhouse and pool complex as a internal community area. Shared stormwater management facilities with the adjacent property. Because of the terrain, because of the watershed management, we felt it was best to have shared stormwater, so it wouldn't be 100% contained on site just for the apartments. It is a shared facility. Regional planning, regional engineering. The units themselves are 24 to 36 units per building. The buildings would be 3-story buildings, and we'll show you a rendering of that next. We are planning having a park in the middle so that there's a place to relax and walk around and have some greenery and some quiet time within the community. And then there's shared access drives. We have 2 access points, meets code, and also for safety. And as I mentioned, internal sidewalks, paths, and whatnot. This would be the northern piece of the site. You can see learn how to use this. So you got the southern pieces where the commercial frontage, and this would be 15.5 acres of in the back for the community apartments. This is an artist rendering and perspective architectural for the building. We're looking to get some movement in the building in terms of appearance, but that keep it more of a traditional earth tone color palette. But there would be 3-story walk-ups. The mix would be 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, some 2 bedrooms with a den, and then also some 3 bedrooms. We limited the mix to mostly 2-bedroom apartments, trying to keep it within a price range that is considered the working class affordability for Citrus County, even though we are trying to help that affordability range go up and up with the salaries. Some points on landscaping and buffering. Your land development code only requires a 5-foot grass strip between residential and residential, whether it be multifamily and multifamily. So what we're proposing is a combination of things along the north property boundary. Oh, back up one here. Right along this north boundary, we're proposing a 10-foot type B buffer, which would be 4 trees, hedges, and everything along that north boundary, which would border up against the current zoned MDR. And the next application will show that we're proposing to combine, if the next application is approved, combine both buffers for the offsite portion and this portion for a total of 25-foot type C buffer. But if that never happened, then at least we would propose a 10-foot buffer in place of a 5-foot grass strip. Where there is parking, for example, here, we're proposing the 10-foot buffer with a fence. That'd be a vinyl fence or a wall, but at least a fenced opaque closure for those areas. And I think there's another area right over here. If in fact there's parking adjacent to that, it would be a fenced area, which just provides more privacy. They don't look at cars. Other areas of landscaping, I want to point out that all along this internal access drive would be landscaped. We would landscape all the parking areas. We meet all the code with regards to parking, landscaping islands, and obviously the park would have landscaping as well. I'm giving you a couple of examples of some linear type buffering. This is an oak tree. Try to space them a little further apart. They get a lot bigger. This is a magnolias. You can put them a little bit closer. They get a little more dense. So a couple of examples of buffering. Once again, just to point out the different captures of buffering, this is now looking at the entire town center concept itself, which includes what we just talked about was the buffering along the multifamily area. When we get into the commercial area, the buffer changes to a 15-foot buffer and a fence or a wall where that butts up against the residential area. We also are proposing buffering along access drives here, and then a 25-foot buffer strip along the front to meet the code. But we do have some conditions and stipulations as it relates to signage there as well. Once again, kind of a concept idea of buffering along the highway. Just quickly on site access and traffic, there are 3 connection points that would come in, that would be primary connection points, which we one in the middle and one on the end. But we are also proposing specifically for some specific tenants, should it be necessary, to have a right-in, right-out limited access points for what we'd call the larger parcels here and here. And those would be shared right-in, right-out only. They're not median openings. They exceed the county's land development code in terms of spacing. They're on average 440 feet apart. Code only requires less than 200 feet apart, or about 200 feet apart. So we're trying to limit that so that we can have some satisfied commercial clients out there, whether it be a nice restaurant or something similar. So with that, we have the internal access drive itself, which is cars to, and that would be fully pedestrian friendly to keep all traffic that's inside the project. They can stay inside the project and not have to go back out on North Bryan Highway. And then quickly moving on, this is some things we want to talk about later if you want. One of the things that we had talked with staff about is signage. This would be the frontage of a 25-foot wide buffer, but for safety purposes, 25-foot buffer, again, a signage concept. What we would propose is that the front 10 feet along West Noble Bryan Highway be allowed to have a low-profile monument sign that meets code, that once the people finally get through their Google applications and get to where they want to get to, they're not slowing down and looking and turning in. From a safety standpoint, we need to give them a sign that they can see easily, but not overwhelming. So we're proposing monument signs in the front 10 feet, which allows 15-foot of buffer behind the sign, and where the signs are not. This is a visibility triangle, just so you know, it's shaped as a visibility triangle, but outside of that visibility triangle will be fully landscaped for a full 25-foot wide. These would be spaced about 150 feet apart. The proposed maximum lot width is 150 feet. So if every lot had a sign on it, it would be 150 feet apart for specifically those individual parcels. And your code does allow individual parcels to have a freestanding sign. So this would be the one freestanding sign for those individual parcels. The option, and we've asked staff in the conditions to go ahead and allow, if they do not have a monument sign out in the front 10 feet, that they're allowed a freestanding sign behind the 25-foot buffer. But that sign would have to be elevated high enough so they could actually try to see it. And that provision and that requirement and that PUD standard is in our proposed PUD. So with that, I think that just about wraps up everything I needed to tell you. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from staff?
Yes, sir. Thank you. First of all, the slide you just showed with the sign, is there a height for those low profile signs you're referencing, the monuments?
Yes, maximum 8 foot high.
8 foot is a low profile. Okay. I know you wanted to add a condition in your last resubmittal of a 10-year time frame for the PUD. So staff has 14 conditions plus that'll be a 15th. Is that correct? You wanted the 10-year just to confirm.
Correct.
Okay. And then you wanted to modify condition 7. You want to allow a 10-foot modified type B instead of staff's suggestion of a 15-foot type C. A 25-foot type C. And can you go into a little bit why you're doing that?
Well, once again, we requested a 10-foot wide type B buffer between the multifamily residential and the current medium density residential that's off the adjacent property.
Okay, so you're counting on the buffer that's next to it. I just want to make that clear for the board.
Right.
Okay. That's it. Thank you, sir.
Any questions from commissioners? Yes, Mr. Facemeyer.
Mr. Pigeon, I'm looking at drawing 2 of 3.
Yes, sir? Not sure which one. Right, that drawing is the,
Well, it's not, you don't really have to look at it, but
Right.
I'm looking at a building to the north of the stormwater management area. Can you tell me what that is?
just want to make sure, 2 of 3, just so you know, that is the apartment concept. The building north of the stormwater area, or next to the clubhouse, sir?
You talking about the
There's
second?
a
just talking about-
stormwater management area along Norvell Bryant.
Correct, and then it's the longer building. That would
Behind,
be
and
the,
directly to the north of that is a large structure.
You have like a big box there.
Is that a big box store or what's that?
oh, okay. Yes, that would be a commercial structure. Yes, sir.
Okay,
And, yep, that would be a commercial structure.
yeah, okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I have one.
Yes,
I'm not really clear on the buffers when you and Ms. Katu were talking. You were saying about the buffer between the 2 uses, the residential uses. The question I have is, I thought was talking about the buffer between the commercial and the residential use, where they were suggesting a 25-foot type C, and you're planning on a B.
Yes, the buffer between the commercial, what happened? I touched it. Go
You have to
back.
hit the back button, I think.
Yeah, I'm pushing back. Yes, to answer your question, Ms. Worthington, the buffer between commercial and MDR, we're proposing a 15-foot type B with a wall.
And what I was talking about was the northern boundary to the next
okay.
parcel. And that one staff is suggesting a 25-foot type C and he wants a 10-foot type B there.
Right. Staff was talking about the one between the multifamily and residential. Right. And that's what I was saying. Code requires a 5-foot grass strip. We are proposing a 10-foot type B buffer, 4 trees per every 100 feet, and just for this application. The next application, we're proposing an additional 15-foot buffer, even though none is required, and the combination of the two to equivalent to a type C buffer. But for this application, 10-foot type B buffer.
any other comments or questions?
I have questions about the signs. The 13 signs. First of all, the out parcels along 486 right there. Just to be clear, I understand it, but I just want to make sure everyone else understands. This is internal access only. there's not going to be cuts for driveways for each of those parcels along 486. There's the 3 access points. They'll utilize the internal roadway to come to those properties from internally, correct?
Not entirely correct. I'd like to get to the submitted master plan, the updated.
Okay, hold on. Let's see what we got. This one here? No, that's the
No,
wrong
wrong.
application. Still the wrong one. Let me get this.
To answer your question, Mr. Bramlett, 3 primary access points with West Noble Bryan Highway full median openings, which would be the primary access points east-west. There are certain commercial entities that are interested in the site and other things such as higher quality restaurants that need a right in, right out to get the people in and out specifically for their business. We would propose to exceed the county's code in where those are allowed along this stretch of property. So we are showing, I believe, 3 additional right in, right outs. Now those would not be through streets. They would have to kind of meander through the parking lot to eventually get to the back, but they would be access points to get on and off of West Noble Bryan Highway, specifically for those businesses.
Okay, because your site plan doesn't show that.
Well, the site plan that staff put up didn't show it. The site plan that's been submitted prior to the deadline does show that.
Okay.
And it's in this presentation. In this,
What's the average size of those parcels right there? I'm just curious. You're saying roughly
they're about
150
they're
across the
all
front.
over an acre. They're like acre and a
Each?
quarter would be the smallest.
Okay.
Basically, an acre will be the smallest. And they're 350 foot deep, 150 foot wide is a traditional size. If you have a larger restaurant, it's usually doubled. And then obviously bigger sites want 3 and 4 acres.
Right. So then my question would be the 2 or 3 parcels along the Norvell Bryant that have their own right in, right out access.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Those-
so, and we would have shared.
Everyone else would utilize the internal access.
Yes, sir.
So basically
Yes,
like it would be however they want to orient it, but they would come in the 3 access points. Are they going to utilize and be able to utilize one of these? Like if you put a restaurant in, like for example, and they want their own right in, right out access, somebody will be able to utilize that access and go onto that piece of property and then get to the internal
Yes, sir.
access roads?
Yes, if they wind through their parking lot and get
So
there.
really we could
Yes,
end
sir.
up with like 6 access points into this particular project from 486.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
And then so you're proposing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9,
The previous.
10, 11, 12, 13 signs, and the staff doesn't really like that, and I'm sort of in agreement. And then my point with all of that is if it's an internal access, I can see the ones that are on the right in, right out access having their own sign along the 486 area.
Mhm.
But the stuff that's internally accessed, like your example of using Google, it doesn't really apply because they're just going to turn on the inside and they're going to drive down that access road and be able to locate whatever establishment it is that they're going to. So I'm just telling you what I think. I think that the signage, I'm leaning towards what the staff has to say because I feel like it's too many signs along that particular area right there. And why I think that it can be rectified is because 10 of the 13 parcels are going to be internal access only. So somebody's not going to be using Google and go, okay, I need to go to a Foot Locker. It's right there. I need to turn in. What they're going to go into the main one of the two of the 3 access points and do internal access, right? So the signage really, there's a little bit of wiggle room is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, what tends to happen is if you have all of them agree, they can have a pylon sign and maybe get some exposure. The way these out parcels are marketed and the way these out parcels are used, and then some are combined and some aren't. Well, we don't know which parcels are going to be combined and which ones aren't.
Right.
So we have to
I
have
think what the
flexibility
staff
that
could do
each
though is just
parcel.
give you like some leeway and say,
Right.
okay, we can do this and you'll cobble together and you'll know which national chains need their monument sign along the 486 area, and then the other ones that are going to be internal access, obviously they just don't get it.
No, I understand. We were trying to at least be consistent with the code that each out parcel had the ability to have a sign recognition without having to figure out and wait until multiple parcels are acquired and then they all agree to a monument sign.
Right.
If this is more of a strip center or is more of a multi-tenant building, it would obviously be a monument sign with a pylon with they all combined together.
Right.
But in this case, there's a whole litany of possibilities for each parcel, and just about every national chain wants their own sign. They've got their own sign specifications and their own sign design, and they want to see it from both sides instead of one. So it gets pretty complicated when you have individual parcels that have to use a shared, non-traditional business sign for that business. That's the problem.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
But we limited it to a height and a size and a spacing. The other thing we needed flexibility is, as you saw in staff's photo, there are several really large power poles for the transmission power line down through there. So we have to have some flexibility to be able to move the sign so that it's not hidden by that big power pole. And, and saying you got to share signs now, it's like, how do you share signs with those power poles?
I have a question. Some of these footprints for these out parcels, that these buildings look rather distinctive. This looks like it's going to be a hotel or something. And what is this one down in the southeast, with its own surrounding parking lot and a white rectangle in the front of it on 486?
Well, that could be a combination of things. There's nothing specific for that particular site, but that is illustrated as if it was a gas station. But our guess is it'll never be a gas station, but we at least illustrated it as such. But it could be medical, could be restaurant. It's not committed yet.
What about the one with the paved entrance going underneath the portico in the front?
That right now is considered to be medical, but we're not 100% sure.
And at the west terminus, it looks like it's going to go into that medical place that's being built currently. Is that going to be open through traffic?
The driveway closest to 486 is a controlled right-in, left turn only. I mean, it's a right in, right out, but it's a left turn only. You talking about the one next to Clear Sky, sir?
I'm talking about your internal road?
Oh, the internal road.
East-west, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the eastern terminus, it looks like it's going to be open to the medical facility that's being built, the rehabilitation place.
Yes, sir.
It will be open.
Yes, sir.
And what about on the western terminus where it just stops there, but the two parcels are there? Will that be going into where Target is being built?
Cross access.
That's the intent. It'll have to have cross access. I'm sure when that's developed and the site plan comes in, they will have to show cross access.
Okay.
So
So
that-
that you'll be able to go from 491 through the cross access and go all the way down to this rehabilitation hospital.
That's the intent, yes, sir. And then you can go past the hospital all the way into the YMCA, all the way over to the school site, and then continue to.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? You have your stormwater detention area, and you indicated that it was going to share with the application to the north of this. Let's play devil's advocate for a moment that the application to the north does not get approved. If you were to just have to use what is on your parcel, is that basin large enough to accommodate your drainage from just this parcel?
We think it could, but it would require some creative engineering, and we would probably have to do other things within that particular parcel to try to capture some stormwater management elsewhere, even if it was underground storage under a parking lot or something.
Okay. Now let's flip it. Assuming that both applications are approved, you are now sharing a detention basin on both parcels. Two different projects, two different owners at the end of the day, as far as I can see. How will that be maintained? Because now you have two entities. Will there be an agreement in place between the two developers so that that is properly maintained by both developments?
Absolutely, yes, sir. There'd be cross-access agreements, is cross-drainage agreements.
Okay.
And the Water Management District would also require that those be in place before a permit was issued to show that they have legal authority. Each entity has legal authority to go in and maintain.
All right, thank you. For staff, Mr. Pigeon indicated that the east-west road was going to tie into the adjacent parcel, which is where Target is going in. I believe on that side of the Target parcel, we had approved that there would be a detention basin there. Is this going to
There's
create?
an entire parcel between it. This does not connect to the target parcel.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Pigeon.
Sir, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Staff was wanting to talk about specific conditions.
Yes.
I don't know if staff had specific language that they were presenting later, or should I wait on talking about conditions?
You've got a copy of the conditions in the staff report, and then I was adding the 10 years.
Okay, I
And
just
then
didn't
we'll
know
talk about the
if-
two that you want changed.
If I should go through all the conditions now, or let staff do the report, and then we can talk about conditions.
To you, this is your time.
Okay, if I don't mind, just condition 6, and staff didn't get this in time. Condition 6 says that and I want to make clarification, it says the site must meet the requirements of LDC 3740, additional design standards for large non-residential projects. I understand that would apply to the non-residential part of this PUD, but it does not apply to the apartments. If we need to add clarification, I want to make sure that the apartments do not need to meet commercial standards of 3740.
The apartments do. Multifamily is considered non-residential, so that is in our allowed development code required. So you're asking for relief from that?
Could staff cite the code where it says HDR multifamily is non-residential? Because there's citations in the code that specifically say that HDR residential multifamily is considered residential.
In the buffer categories, yes.
In the buffer
Right, but
categories,
in
correct.
3740, it is defined as non-residential multifamily. So if you're asking for relief from that, we can consider that deviation for the apartments.
Correct. I'd like to eliminate the apartments.
What would that deviation entail? What are we deviating from? The buffers? Is that what we're talking about?
Or facade, or
Well, there's things like the facade, and you saw the facade. There'll be some movement of this facade. It'll look nice. Some of the more critical pieces are 50% landscaping along the front of the building. And you'll see this in the next application, and you'll see others. When the buildings get smaller, you can't have access into an apartment and still have 50% landscaping in front of that building. So a few things like that. There's additional landscaping requirements in parking lot. So that there's little changes, but they're hardships when you're trying to reach the plan that we've designed, and the plan that fits the property, and the plan that fits a community that's all over the state. To have extra buffering when we're providing buffering, but extra landscaping in the parking lot, it's contradictory to try to have compact density, walking space, community space, but then you're using it up with extra things that I don't believe are necessary for a non-residential apartment complex.
Well, you're saying it's residential.
I'm saying residential
Right,
apartment
but it
complex.
is non-residential.
Correct,
The only thing I
non-residential
would
would
say to
comply.
that though is this is a blank slate. This is a completely brand new development. You're
Correct.
saying you're constrained, like you can design anything
Constrained
you want.
in the
If
residential.
you had to meet the code, you would meet the code.
Correct.
Right. That's why I was just trying
So-
to figure out, like,
so
so
we-
I'll talk to the staff about that part.
Okay, so we would like to just qualify that does not include the high-density residential because we have PUD standards to go by.
Okay. Any other comments, Mr. Pigeon?
Just want to be sure. And we're in agreement on condition 7, where we talked about the buffers, that we are removing the exception of the 25-foot type C, and we're going with a 15-foot type B. That's on condition 7. And condition 11, we talked about signage. We wanted the ability to have monument signs no higher than 8 foot high, in the front 10 feet, spaced per parcel, one per parcel, along 486 West North O'Brien Highway, so that they could find themselves. And I want to go on record that it's a safety issue if they cannot see that sign when they're driving.
Okay. Any other questions, Mr. Pigeon, or concerns at this time?
No, sir. No, sir.
All right, very good. Thank you.
We're having technical stuff today, aren't we? I can't fault myself. I'm bad at this too, so. As you'll see with some of my drawings, but. All right, this is an application to change approximately 55 acres. This is going from general commercial and PSO with a planned unit development that's in place already to general commercial, PSO, and high-density residential for non-residential and apartment uses. We've seen a little bit about this. You can't really see clearly here, but you will on a later slide. This does not actually abut the target parcel. There is a parcel in between there from this. You can see on the west side there is the Clear Sky Rehab that you guys have recently approved and the commission recently approved. So this is the proposed master plan. This is the original master plan. They did turn in a revised master plan that's in your packet that was submitted on the last day of quasi-judicial input. They are allowed to do that, but unfortunately we cannot review that in time to give you written feedback because of that date. I'm going to go over this in a minute, so we're going to go back to that. I wanted you to see the previous PUD that was in place. This is what was proposed previously. You can see that the commercial was in the back. There were 5 out parcels and some townhomes and a possible multifamily ALF there on the west side. So just to look at those, and I tried to line this up. I realized it kind of scaled, that might not right, but the access drives are in the same location as the existing PUD. You can see that Clear Sky took part of that area, and you can see there's quite a few more out parcels. There's the multifamily that's added. So there are a lot of changes from the existing PUD. So talk about some of the things that they're proposing that are different. Staff did propose some conditions. You heard some discussions on that. This is a slide prepared by Joe. I give him all the credit. I am not a graphics person, but this actually tries to show how it is within, fits in with Target and everything else. So I'm not very talented at this either. There is a gap right here. This area right here is a gap between this application and the target parcel. And the areas in yellow you'll hear in just a moment with the next application. So one of the things we talked about was where this abuts residential. Now our land development code says residential to residential, no buffer, a 5-foot sodded strip, basically nothing. Staff is noting, however, that the high density residential here is 20 units per acre. That's the highest Citrus County will allow in our comprehensive plan, and that's what they're proposing. It's 19.6 something. Up to the north, the application you're going to hear is about 3 units per acre. So we were kind of trying to protect those people. It is the same applicant. He's trying to put a buffer there and a buffer here to make a combination 25 foot. And the final fence is gone as well. All right, this is our conceptual plan. You heard a little discussion just a moment ago about 50% frontage. I think they're very close to it on this particular plan. Our apartments are treated as non-residential for permitting purposes. For buffers, no, we look at those as a little differently for residential. But for anything else and for development, we do treat them as non-residential. They have to meet facade standards. This probably does. This plan actually probably meets the 50% pretty easily too on the front. So can't really support relief from the large non-residential section. I'll tell you that part of the code has a lot of idea of you do this instead of this. There's a lot of options. There's not a you have to build it just like this, just like this. There are some options in there, but I could not support relief from that particular section for these apartments. And we talked about signage. Yeah, there's a lot of signs here. The stars are the pylon signs. The green are the monument signs. I did get the clarification. A monument sign is 8 feet. That's a lot. Usually we see monument signs of 3 feet or less. Now, I'll tell you in the new submittal, several of the rear pylon signs right here and right here have changed to monument. So that absolutely helps. But I would think that this is 46. This is our gateway. The commissioners are certainly working on that with interchange management area. Very conscious of how 46 looks. And this number of signs along here, the statement that they can't do shared signs because chains and stuff don't like that. On the way in this morning, I passed McDonald's and Mavis Tire on 491 by 486. They have a shared monument sign. It's very low. It's probably 3 feet high, and it's shared. It has Mavis and McDonald's on it. You can see it very clearly. It's a perfect example of, I think, shared monument signs work. Can't support this in a buffer either. We've been very, very tight on that with applications because I know they want visibility, but remember our buffers are not continuous hedges or continuous trees. There are this many trees and shrubs per 100 feet. So there's plenty of room to put a sign, have it be visible, and still stay out of that buffer area. So can't really support placement in the buffer, certainly not in the visibility triangle, and they're not asking for that. But the number of signs seems excessive. Now, I'll point out that the application notes that the proposed multifamily area is planned for the active and working class community. We don't have a condition on that. That's part of their narrative. So if you want to add that, we certainly can do so. Another deviation is 65% maximum ISR in the high density area, the apartment area, whereas the code says 55%. So that's something that you'll be considering as well. So we talked about the buffer deviations. We talked about signage. There are quite a few conditions here. There's 14, and then we just added the one. So condition number 1 references a September 30th, 2022 site plan. Actually, the new site plan would now be November 25th. The write-in, write-outs are new to the plan. Those have not been reviewed by engineering because of the submittal time. They would have to meet engineering standards. That is one of the conditions anyway. So just to let you know on that. The applicant has continued some of the existing PUD prohibitions. The existing PUD prohibits halfway houses, cemeteries, shooting ranges, flea markets, and mobile home sales and service. That's continuing with this application. That's up to them. Our code doesn't have anything like this. They're allowed in general commercial, but they are keeping that prohibition. They're also keeping the prohibition about fast foods with drive-ups on the northern 300 feet of the property. Now, granted, that's pretty much the apartment area, but they're keeping that. That was something that was previously here. FAR, they seem to be meeting. I told you about the ISR increase. It has to be served by central water and sewer. It's here, that's not a problem. Number 6, he talked about relief from the categories for development of the apartments. Staff cannot support that particular item. Number 7, it's up to you if you want the combination buffer. I'm a little uncomfortable about it because it's 2 applications. But I'm protecting them almost from themselves. So the number 11, the condition with the shared signs, I said 2 pylon shared signs maximum. Right now you can see, I think there's some left. And just for signage too, to point out, see there's a sign in this DRA. Each one has one. They've got one here and a pylon here and a pylon here. I understand wanting to have subdivision ID signs for the multifamily apartments. Those are low monument, very limited signs. They're not usually pylon signs for apartment complexes. Granted, we don't have a lot of apartment complexes in Citrus County. We're just starting to see those. We also note that this is not a parcel of record right now, so they will have to create that via platting. This was some of their town center concepts. This is actually from the previous application. I don't know if they're actually going to continue this. And we'll go back to the site plan. Woo, all right. It went back to the entire other thing by its own. No, it's I clicked and went suddenly back to the.
You're back now.
Can I go backwards?
Is it working?
Yeah, thank you. All right, so hopefully I've addressed everything, but if you have any questions.
Could you put up the existing or the proposed site plan? That's not the.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right.
Thank you.
Please consider the one from 10 years
Can you
ago.
put the other one up with the red dots and the blue dots?
No, apparently not. Hang on.
That one.
Yeah. So I was looking also in comparison with the old plan. You can see their pylon, and they had a few pylon signs. This red star should now be a green star or blue, and the same with this one.
Just to clarify, the pylon signs are the bigger ones. They're taller, has multiple
Correct.
businesses on there.
Correct, and right, and the monument signs he's proposing up to 8 feet. We normally see those more like 3 feet.
Okay, right. So that's the clarification for the number 11. Monument signs for the out parcels. That means every out parcel.
That's what's
All
being
those out
proposed.
parcels along 480.
That's what's being proposed. Staff would suggest you actually do some shared. I would think that
Right,
every
but
2 out
your
parcels can
condition
share.
says
Correct.
monument
It's,
signs
yeah, I know it's not worded well, and I realized after I wrote that that's
for
not.
the out parcels.
Monument signs for the out parcels shall be shared. Yes,
You want them shared then?
I do. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 right there. I think no more than 5.
Shared monument signs
Right.
is what it should say then.
No, that's staff's recommendation. That's up to y'all.
Joanna,
Mm-hmm.
however, though, if they did have a circumstance arise where there was an issue, they could come back for a minor modification through you administratively, if they had to.
Not the way it's currently proposed. We can put something in there to say that for signage. Usually that would not be a minor modification allowance because the board is considering that signage plan. But we can put something in there. Safety, absolutely. We'd want to look at that. But the fact that a particular developer wants it, it's a little harder to justify.
Any other questions for Joanne? Yes.
Joanne, I have a question about, in Citrus County, do we have any other apartment buildings that are 3 stories and have no elevator?
Yes, I think so. I think the one in Beverly Hills, the what's it called, Marina Del Rey. I think that's 3 stories. Once they get above 3 stories, our fire code does. My understanding, please, I'm not in fire. Makes an elevator required, but 3 stories or less, they're not.
Okay, thank you.
At least that's my best understanding as a layman. I'm qualifying that statement, but.
You might not be able to answer this, but I'm going to throw it out anyways. Obviously, there's going to be, or I shouldn't say, there's an opportunity for children to be in the apartments, seeing as we have multiple bedrooms. Any concern? I wish Mr. Dixon was still here. Any concerns with the impact on the school systems? Are we starting to push the maximum capacity on our schools? Do you know?
We do not have school concurrency in place right now that would require the applicant to demonstrate that, but no, Mr. Dixon has reviewed this. He's aware.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for staff? Thank you very much. Okay, at this time, the public portion of the meeting will be held. If anybody is interested in speaking in favor of this application, please step forward. Anyone in favor? Anyone in favor? Anyone in opposition? Anyone in opposition? Anyone in opposition? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing and return to the board for discussion and possible action. Any comments?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I like the plan. I think overall that's a good plan. I feel like they've taken the community into consideration. I'm going to have to side with staff on this one as far as the signage, especially considering the fact, like Ms. Katu pointed out, that this is kind of like a little gateway area. We have the opportunity to develop this particular area to whatever we want it to be. And I think that the signs that they have proposed is just too many signs. It's too many signs, so I don't support that deviation, and I don't support their deviation for the greenery on chapter 3740 for the HDR.
Any other comments, questions? Yes.
Mr. Chair, I guess I'm in agreement with Mr. Bramlett pretty much, as far as this being a very nice project for this area, and HDR is compatible with this area. I do agree with him on condition number 6 and number 11. The buffer thing, you know, I don't like the fact that we're having to consider 2 separate applications to combine a buffer. I've never seen this before, as long as I've been here anyway. So, I mean, as far as deviations though, 6 and 11, I'm in agreement with Mr. Bramlett, but 5, I feel like, or not 5, but the buffer, I feel like okay.
Any other comments? Any other questions?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Brown. Mr.
I
Brown.
agree with everything that was just said. You know, I think it is a good project. I think we do have the opportunity to do something right here. I'm not 100% convinced. I wish these apartments were for affordable housing and not just for anybody, but I can't change that. I am in agreement with the number 6 and number 11, and number 3, as indicated earlier by my fellow commissioners. But I would be in favor, even though it's not affordable housing.
Any other comments? I think it's a very good project also. However, the maximum ISR, they're asking for 65, and I believe it's supposed to be 55?
In the HDR area only, yes.
Right. By going to 65%, it's an increase of roughly 1.5 acres of impervious surface. As several commissioners expressed, this is a clean slate. We have an opportunity to really make this look really, really good, and I'm having a tough time accepting this much impervious surface when we don't have to. You know, why can't they meet our requirement of 55? They certainly, I understand financial situations, they're trying to make the biggest, dollar amount possible and everything. I understand that, but that's not what the county's here for. The county is here for protecting our regulations. So I would hope that my fellow commissioners would consider condition 3 and possibly reducing that from the 0.65. I know 55% is our standard. Maybe we bring it down to 60, but I just don't like that 65%. That's a lot of coverage in my opinion. So be open to hear anybody else's comments or thoughts on that.
I am 100% fine with a 1.5 acre overage on a 55 acre parcel.
Okay, thank you.
As long and the staff agrees to it. We've heard both sides. We get to be the judge on whoever, and I side with both parties on that one.
Okay.
The staff agrees with it. I agree with it.
All right, thank you. Any other
Just
comments?
to add, also the open space is at the requirement of 20%. So, and with the pocket parks, and they have some recreation. So I'm in agreement with Mr. Bramlett.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Any other concerns?
I would you guys keep talking about this buffer thing, and I wanna hammer that out real quick, because based on what Mr. Pigeon said, there's a 5-foot strip of grass that's required. Correct?
Yes,
Along-
between residential to residential, yes.
Right, and he's proposing a 25-foot wide strip with the utilization of both parcels. The next application that we're gonna hear.
Considering, yes, he's proposing a 10 on this one and a 15 on the other one. Staff was suggesting a 25 on this one.
Right, so we're gonna have 5 times the amount that's required. Actually, no, it would be 5 foot and 5 foot, 10 foot. We're gonna have 25, so it'd be like, what, 65% more than what's required already?
But only in that one section. Where over where the commercial is, it's entirely different. And then also,
But he's also
there's two
offering a
separate
wall.
applications. And like Commissioner Bass said, if one is approved and the other is not, then you don't have the required buffer at all.
But it doesn't require but a 5-foot strip anyway.
Over there. I'm talking about the commercial to residential part to the
east.
East.
Along the strip on the side right here?
Right, from there to the east, you have a reduced buffer strip.
With a fence or a wall?
It's the northern part back next to the apartments is 15-foot type C, or are you talking about internally? I'm not following, I'm sorry.
I think we're talking about the north boundary.
Right, the north boundary, he's proposing the 10-foot.
Right. Now, the
He said-
apartments are considered commercial, correct?
For buffer purposes, they're residential.
Okay.
And that's where I'm having the 5-foot thing, yeah.
And Commissioner Bramlett, I think the staff testified their concern was HDR is a density that's the highest in our code, and so that in order to protect the abutting MDR, looking at a larger buffer versus you know, and they are doing more than is required by our code, and if we don't like the code, we should change it, but I
They're
mean,
doing
that's
more
what the
than
situation is right now.
more than half of what's required between
Right.
the two parcels.
On the residential and on the eastern side, I apologize, now I'm following you, the commercial area, they're asking for the 15-foot C, and that's actually
Supposed to be,
supposed to be a 25D.
but then they're offering the additional
But then-
15 foot on the adjacent parcel to the north.
That's what he's
Correct, which is
testified.
gonna
which
still
we're not
be
considering
large.
yet, but yes.
Right, but we've all read it. We know it's offered.
Right, but we have to look at these as both individual
Come on.
parcels.
No.
Yes.
You just read the other one. You know that the other application is going to have. Why would you make them have 50 foot of buffer there in between when you know that the other parcel is going to have, and between the compensation between the two of them together are going to equal more than what's required anyway?
But we have to take each one on its individual merits.
I get that, but we also know what's going to be.
But again, just let's play the devil's advocate for a moment, just like I do with Mr. Pigeon with the drainage. If for some reason that one to the north doesn't make it, then we're cutting ourselves short on this one. So I think that staff has done a very good job in trying to protect the residents of all of Citrus County. That's what their job is to do. And I think that this is the right thing for us to go with the recommendations that they have put forth on the buffers.
I will respectfully disagree.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Also, we may know what may happen here today, but then this also then goes before our Board of County Commissioners, and we have no idea what will happen there. And
Good point.
also, they are also asking for, you know, HER versus what is zone GNC. So they're asking for something different, but the buffers don't, you know.
Right.
So they're asking for considerations as well.
Right.
Right, so in their new submittal, they have a revised condition number 7. Basically, its buffers shall be provided as outlined on the master plan, and they take out the rest of that sentence and start over. A reduced width 15-foot type C may be placed between the multifamily and commercial. So that's what they're asking for, that's the request for condition 7 rewording.
Okay. So the conditions you have written now would change.
Would change, yes, if you agree with what they're talking about, you would remove the language with the exception of a 25-foot type C along the southern northern boundary. That part of the sentence would disappear.
Okay.
If we agreed with who?
If you agreed with Mr. Pigeon.
And that's contrary to what the conditions are that you suggested that we were reading.
Correct, although understanding I had no idea he was trying to combine buffers when this was written. That was something that came in after that.
So you feel that this is a good compromise?
Like some board members, I'm a little uncomfortable relying on another application, but I do understand what he's trying to get at with we're protecting his one application from his other application. So.
Right. So the buffer that he is proposing would be 15 feet, and that
10 feet.
10
feet
feet
in this area. 10-foot B is what he's proposed on his site plan, on this particular one, and 15 to the north.
right. So, and we're supposed to have, and you want 25 feet.
I wanted 25 feet, but I wasn't aware of his proposal to combine.
Okay.
Not right. The code requires 5. Unfortunately, the code has no requirement between residential to residential. It's just the
Requires 5.
except for the commercial area. Yes,
Correct.
I'm talking about the apartments.
And the residential, for the buffer's sake, is more than 75% almost, it looks like, of the entire length of the parcel, roughly. So we're splitting hairs over that tiny little end portion on the east over there is what we're really talking about, because it only requires a 5-foot, and they're gonna have a 25-foot.
Mr. Chair, just to explain where I'm at, I'm accepting the buffer deviation, just not the changes the applicant has suggested to number 6 and number 11.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Lynn, you look like you want to say something.
No,
Oh,
I mean,
okay,
you all have to accept the testimony that's provided.
Okay, just look at your
whether
face
you like
like-
it or not, it's what the testimony is. It's up to y'all to decide what you want to do with that testimony.
So, based on what you have heard, Joanna, what would you from our side here. I mean, we've all thrown a bunch of things out. As the planner, and listening to what Mr. Pigeon has said, what do you feel comfortable with from a planning perspective? Do we do 10, do we 25, do we do the 5? What would really make this an appealing project for the county?
Right. I would never, as a planner, try to make something an appealing project. But when you're looking at buffers, when you're buffering non-residential to residential, that is a concern. So that eastern area, reducing the buffer width is a concern there. On the apartments, it's residential to residential. The board is very correct that 5 foot's required. However, that's a very dense site. But again, I'm protecting the applicant from himself. So.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
we have heard from one side of the argument. Ms. Katu, Mr. Pigeon is standing there. I'd like to see if he has something he'd like to offer in rebuttal to hearing, since we've offered that opportunity.
I was getting to that after we
Yeah.
finally, hopefully, worked our own issues out. Yes, Mr. Pigeon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I just want a point of clarification. The buffer between commercial and residential is a 15-foot by code, type C, with a wall. We are meeting that code. It's recommended in the land development code that it's preferred to have a 25-foot. The code requirement, the way I read it, is 15. So there is no violation of code unless staff can interpret that differently than I do. So I don't think there's any, and that strip, just the piece of strip up there is actually zoned professional service office, PSO. The north 50 feet of that is PSO. We're not changing that zoning. So it'll never be anything other than PSO. It's allowed for parking and buffering. So that's what we're doing, parking and buffering.
Okay.
The other point is, and it is a commercial dilemma that's faced all over the state. The tenant that buys the property for commercial, they insist on monument signs or freestanding signs. They do not want to share signs. And yes, I agree. The across the street at the Central Ridge Plaza, it's a one commercial entity site mixed with a developer's agreement. And that allowed certain signage within the buffers, pylon signs, and it was a pretty good push to get those signs on one monument sign. So that said, we wanted to meet the code, one sign per parcel, platted parcel. If the parcel is too small, and that's the concern, too many signs, perhaps we could build in a condition that says any parcel that's 2 acres or larger is allowed to have a freestanding sign, but anything 2 acres and less needs to use a shared common sign between the smaller parcels. I think that's sort of the happy medium, because we can't restrict ourselves to have a reliable tenant that wants a pylon, that wants their own sign, force them to share a sign with their neighbor, which they may not want to. So that's really the thing. We could enter in the conditions, 2 acres or larger, they're allowed a freestanding sign, period.
Okay. Thank you for that offer. Okay, so.
Wait a minute. How many parcels are 2 acres or larger?
Well,
We don't know.
right
yet.
now, we're showing 2.
Conceptually.
But that means, there could be a lot of combined stuff. These out parcels are shown as a scenario that could happen where they're 1 acres. But I don't believe it's going to stay that way very long. I think they're going to look and they're going to say, I want 2 of those 1 acre tracts, or I want 3 of those 1 acre tracts, or I want 1.5 of those. We wanted to look at what could be like the most dense, worst case, multiple sites. And we've showed 1 acre sites. Traditionally, that's what you do in commercial planning and development. And then the market dictates how they're going to get combined together eventually. I don't think we're going to have all Starbucks lined up down that road. So they're all, we're going to have some that require more land. So we were just looking at, when you get to a 2 acre or larger, that typically is a restaurant. They want their own sign.
Thank you. Are you satisfied now? Good. All right. Yes.
Well, I just want to recognize this has to go before the Board of County Commissioners. I don't know if y'all have been watching the Board of County Commissioners meetings lately, but there's a new board in town. And there's a new attitude. It would appear in the conversations that I've had with the commissioners that Citrus County has been found, and our commissioners are of the mindset that they want our county to develop nicely and in a way that we can all be proud of. So I just put that out there that this is one of the biggest intersections, and I'm sure y'all don't want me to get out my Imagine a World talk from a few months ago, but the board is definitely keenly aware of what our major intersections look like and what the new growth coming to our county looks like.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I add a comment?
Yes, sir.
On these monument signs, you're saying 8 feet tall. I just don't see the traffic safety being a sign 8 feet tall, and then these signs look like a domino effect going down 486. My apologies if I tell you that I don't like that. I don't think it's going to look good with that, with freestanding retail centers and a sign every 150 feet. I won't buy into that. I do agree with the deviation that the county made, the staff made with the pylon signs. I can't agree with that. 13 or 11 signs is what it's going to end up being with your proposal of 2 acres.
Any other thoughts on that, Mr. Barnes? Are you all set?
No, I'm fine. Thank
Good. All right, so let's go back to the buffers. Got to hammer this out. What if we were to look at what the applicant has proposed? He's looking for a 15-foot buffer type B behind the easterly side where the PSO and the commercial is. What if we just carried that all the way across the entire parcel? Would that help with how you feel about the buffering between the two different developments? Would that be satisfactory to you as a planner?
They currently have 10 feet there, so you'd have to see if they can design that accordingly.
And then you're making them put a fence up where they weren't required to put a fence up before.
Well, we could.
They were required to have 10 feet and they were offering 20 feet-ish residential to residential. They were going exceeding what the required was anyway. Now you want them to exceed and put a wall or a fence.
We don't have to have them put the wall up behind the residential side, just behind the commercial side.
Yeah, I think that on the site plan, the wall is on the commercial site, and it's on the next site on the abutting property for the residential. Fence or wall, clarify.
Right, so if we just do the PSO and the commercial with the 15-foot with a wall, and then the rest of it is 15 foot, is that?
Right now, it's got a 10, and then you would be asking for a 15 in that area, yes.
Right. That way there, it's clear cut what we have, very.
It's kind of splitting the baby, I guess, yeah.
Exactly, and I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I'm still fine with the applicant's proposed buffer deviation, just not number 6 and number 11, their request there, but in favor of the project.
I concur.
Me too.
Me too.
Jeez. What do you need me for?
Mr. Chair, for
I'm
the
going
purpose
home.
of
That
for
sounds
the
like stop
purpose
talking.
of a
Wait a
motion.
minute. Excuse me, Mr. Brown. We had talked about a couple of additional conditions. Let's just get a clarification.
Can
on
I make
those.
a motion and then you can discuss it?
Sure.
That's appropriate.
That's Robert's Rule of Order.
Yes.
The Planning and Development Commission finds application number CPA AA PUD 2218 consistent with the Citrus County Comprehensive Plan and the Citrus County Land Development Code, and that this board recommends approval with the conditions as discussed and amended with the words shared and the additional 15th condition, which I can't remember what it is at this
10
particular
years.
point.
Extend to 2032.
Right. The application to the Board of County Commissioners based upon the evidence and testimony presented and the staff report and conclusions regarding this petition.
Second.
Make some taste
We have a first from Commissioner Bramlett and a second from Commissioner Worthington.
Okay, so I'm sorry to, I'll summarize then. How's that?
Thank you.
Condition number 1, changes to the, just the date reference from the master plan of September 30th to the master plan of November 25th.
Yep.
Condition 2 is the prohibition uses that they've offered and were already in place. That remains. Condition 3, regarding a higher ISR of 65% in the HDR. It sounds like there's a consensus to support that. Condition 4, central water and sewer. That was fine. Condition 5, access by 486 and will need to meet access management standards. Condition 6 changed to, actually as in place, the site must meet the requirements of LDC section 3740 additional design standards unless otherwise authorized, without the deviation for the apartments. That sounds like it's consensus as well. Condition 7, buffers shall be provided as outlined on the master plan, period. A reduced width 15-foot type C buffer may be placed between the multifamily and commercial area buffer. That's an internal thing, by the way. And no type C buffer required between the drainage retention area and internal access drives. So it sounds like we have consensus for that. Condition 8 for foundation landscaping is required anyway. It's just it was already in place. Condition 9 was also already in place. They have to meet parking lot landscaping. Condition 10, pedestrian circulation. Condition 11, the site may have no more than 2 pylon shared signs, each not exceeding 300 square feet in size, to be placed at one of the County Road 486 access locations and outside of visibility triangles and required buffers. No more than 5 shared monument signs for the out parcels may be provided, subject to the standards of the LDC, and cannot be located within visibility triangles or required buffers. It sounds like we had a consensus for that as well. Conditions 12 was, it's not recognized, they have to plat this. Condition 13 is if it's not mentioned, you have to follow the LDC. Condition 14, minor modifications are possible. And condition 15 is the PUD will expire after 10 years.
I thought the applicant made some comment regarding a condition on the type of housing that would be here.
It's in this narrative, but it was not in the proposed conditions.
Would it be prudent of us to have it in the conditions so that it's clear what the intent of this development is?
Can we force them to do affordable as a condition?
What are you asking? What is it that you think that the applicant offered?
Gosh.
Working class,
Right. Working
know,
class workforce housing?
No,
I'm not in favor of it.
we can't put any type of.
Okay, just wanted to check so that there's no
I didn't
questions
finish
down the
my
road.
sentence.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have a first from Commissioner Bramlett, a second from Commissioner Worthington, and there's no further discussion, I believe. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Madam Attorney,
Okay.
I apologize. It is 11 o'clock. That's why I didn't let you finish your sentence. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. It happens at meetings.
Okay, on to our next item, which is PUD 22-09. You have an introduction, please?
It's coming.
Yep.
Alrighty, PUD 2209, subdivision for County Road 486 LLC and Elizabeth Olson. This request is to establish a PUD on 135 acres for a 405 unit residential subdivision. An aerial view of the subject property. View of the subject property from County Road 486. Looking west on County Road 486. Looking east on County Road 486. The subject property from County Road 491. Looking north on County Road 491. Looking south on County Road 491. And the master plan submitted by the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. The applicant would like to step forward and make a presentation.
Thank you once again, Chuck Pigeon with Pigeon Ardora, business address 925 Southeast 17th Avenue, 17th Street, Ocala, Florida. The other component of this infill area of the county, been a long time coming. So if you can go to the next slide, please. Once again, the aerial view of how it fits in that northwest quadrant of 491 and West North Bryan Highway, and extends all the way over to the YMCA, all the way over to 491. It covers the area east of Black Diamond that's undeveloped, and borders. This site does border up against the target proposed commercial property that's currently under construction. Next slide, please. Oh, I have it. Sorry about that. Again, the master plan, and the things I'd just like to point out is 405 dwelling units total, which puts it at a density of 3 units per acre, which is less than the current allowed medium density residential of 4 units per acre. It comprises.
Please, sir, we cannot hear you in the back. Thank you.
Is this on?
Doesn't sound like it is.
It was cutting in and out. They were all cutting in and out earlier.
Hang on just 1 second. It's on.
Is it on?
Is this thing
On? Okay. I'll speak louder. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
So this site comprises of 2 component type residential products, single family detached and multifamily attached townhomes. You can see in the master plan that the townhomes are in 2 clustered areas, one just on the north side of the target and the commercial site, and the others just east of Black Diamond, hole number 3, golf hole number 3, I believe it is.
I'm sorry, we still can't hear you, sir. You're cutting in and out.
Let's see right
We
here.
lost 90% of what you just said.
He can move on.
If you want, if we're still having issues with the microphone at the podium,
No, it's working. It is working and should be on, so.
okay, if you'd like to step forward so that you're closer to the presentation, you're more than welcome to, so that you might hear everything without it cutting in and out. Okay, Mr. Pigeon, all yours again.
Thank you,
You're
Chairman.
welcome.
I'll try to speak into this black microphone if I can. Talk about traffic and some traffic operations. They're actually, would directly access this particular portion of the PUD would be 5 connection locations. The road network would technically be 4, but then you could traverse out between some interconnected cross-access easements along the commercial property, and it ends up to be, as you can see, A through F of connection points to get to and from the community. So it disperses traffic quite a bit, and it's not one point that has a high impact to the properties. The community itself, a traditional residential community, but it is a planned unit development. So we do intend on proposing and having a community building with a community area, which would have event rooms, game rooms, kitchenettes, cards, and library. It would have a swimming pool facility for the community. Again, your traditional neighborhood clubhouse community facilities. Perhaps pickleball courts. Would have some pocket parks throughout the neighborhoods. Would also have a multi-use walking trail, which would be sized to accommodate a cart if they did have a golf cart or something in that area. And there'll be mailbox stations, and those would be off of the roadways and landscaped by themselves. So not overdone in terms of amenities, but some very nice amenities for the community. The townhome neighborhood area itself would also have some uniqueness to it. All units would have garages and a minimum of 2-car parking. They would use earth tone colors and traditional, they'd look like larger homes, but there's sort of a artist rendering of a concept that would be proposed. There'd be common neighborhood open areas between and around and behind. There'd be no zero maintenance type community where maintenance of landscaping and the community areas outside of the residential units would be handled. So it'd be less maintenance for individual property owners. There'd be mailbox stations, and the whole community would have sidewalks. The infrastructure itself is traditional infrastructure, the water and wastewater services from the county, underground power services, fiber, internet type utility services. The vehicle and pedestrian amenities for this overall community includes both 50-foot wide rights-of-ways and 80-foot right-of-ways. Both would have sidewalks. We were proposing sidewalk on one side of the road for the 50-foot and one side of the road for the 80-foot right-of-way, but there would be an expanded 8-foot wide multi-purpose trail if we did not go with 2 sidewalks, one on each side. So the 80 foots would be the collectors, and those are shown on the plan. Back to landscape and buffering. This is kind of mirrors up and complements what we've already looked to accomplish on the commercial side. There would be a 20-foot wide buffer along the north property boundary. Once again, the north property boundary by code only requires a 5-foot grass strip. We're proposing a 20-foot wide buffer. It would be, we'll explain a little bit more later on that. Neighborhood buffering between the townhomes and the commercial site is proposed. There'd be combined buffers we talked about on the south boundary between commercial and the high-density residential in this site. There'd be streetscape pocket parks around the mailbox stations and elsewhere where it would accommodate, corners and end of roads and intersections. Overall, combined stormwater management. We'd have the Florida-friendly landscaping, and all the entrances would be landscaped themselves. Once again, there's a very similar picture to what you've seen of a linear buffer type B with magnolia trees. And that's all I needed to present at this time. I'm glad to answer any questions. We had a few staff recommended changes to the conditions, just for clarification more than anything else. We requested to change condition number 5, where it said non-residential uses such as multifamily developments. I would ask that they strike out the multifamily development. This is a townhome. Although they are attached, we prefer and request not to have to meet standard 3740. Condition 10, staff had proposed just a maximum 65% over the entire development. We understand they're trying to average, but we have refined the design, and we would propose to have the ISR based on the size of the lot and specifically where the lots are be platted. This is a multi-phase project, so we have proposed, for good engineering and design reasons, for drainage design, that lots that are 70-foot wide or larger have a 55% impervious. Lots that are 60 foot would have the 65% impervious. Lots that are 50 foot would be 70%. And obviously, the smaller the lot, you use the same house patterns, footprints. You need 70% impervious to make that 50-foot lot work. So the end result is the same. It's just how we get there. And then we had some proposed additional conditions we'd like to request. Staff has seen these, that the ISR is calculated based on the building footprint and the company combined lots, that the minimum lot width is 22 feet. That's what's requested in the proposal and the PUD. And that for the townhomes, the lot coverage is 80%, because the plan is that the lot lines themselves are very tight to the townhome building. The rest of it is open space. The rest of it is buffering. The rest of it is community areas. And we are looking to have fee simple lots per townhome, as opposed to a condominium, a form of platting. So with the fee simple, we would have the lots closer, which means if most of the ownership is the building, We would propose 80% of that is building, 20% is the area, front and back, driveway areas, the backyard area where the back door stoop is, those type of things. So that is condition. The minimum driveway spacing for the townhomes, we would propose that there's no minimum driveway spacing. You saw in the concept, 22-foot wide spaces, each have a driveway. We don't meet the traditional code for a platted subdivision by fee simple lot, but for this type of development, it's common all over the state that zero lot line homes, there's no minimum driveway spacing. And then the buffer between the medium density residential zoning and the proposed HDR zoning would be a combined buffer, supporting what staff's already talked about and what you've already debated, so that the combined buffer, that this development would see to it and be required to form a combined buffer of a minimum 25 feet. So regardless of what happens on the HDR side of the other property, this particular property is required to make sure that there's a combined 25-foot buffer. And that's all we had.
Thank you. Any questions from staff?
Yeah, just a few. Thank you. Your revised condition 10 with the various lot coverages, that's actually per lot, and you don't want to do that for a plat, right? You're doing just however it's designed. If it happens to be 60 foot, it's that. You're talking about a mix of widths during the plats?
Yes, because some of the plats could possibly only be 50-foot wide lots, and therefore that particular plat couldn't meet the 65%.
Right. I'm just trying to say you don't want to calculate on a plat-wide basis. You want it lot per lot. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay. The other is you'll see a lot of discussion in the staff report, and you touched on it, that you're asking for 22-foot wide fee simple lots. That's not something we see here. Our code talks about 40 foot as a minimum, unless it's a PUD. So engineering staff has some concerns about safety with the driveways separated 22 feet. They'd want an engineering traffic engineer supported statement saying that those driveways can be that close. Are you okay with that? Do you think you can provide that, so that I think a traffic engineer can provide that to clarify that safety is not a concern with the 22-foot separations?
Absolutely.
Okay, yes. So if y'all choose to do that, that would certainly be a condition modification. Did you have anything? No. Okay, thank you, sir.
Any comments from staff, from the commissioners? Thank you very much, Mr. Pigeon.
Yes,
at this time, we'll open up the public portion of the meeting. Anyone wish?
Staff.
It's getting a little
I'm
bit-
sorry.
It's getting a little too late for you, I see.
Yeah.
Is it nap time?
Yes, it is. I'm just thinking about all the chores I have to do when I get home. Sorry, Joe. Didn't mean to cut you off Denise.
Okay. Joe Hockadell, Principal Planner. This application is establishing a plan unit development on about 135 acres of existing medium-density residential land. As you can see here, this project is located off of 486, so it would be behind the previous application you just heard. It would be behind the target site, and it would abut up to Black Diamond. So here you can see the existing land uses. And to just kind of give you an idea, you have Black Diamond to the north, the recently heard Amber Ridge Apartments to the south with Clear Sky and the shops of Black Diamond. And then it would directly abut County Road 491 over there on the east side. So here's the master plan. They are requesting 405 units total, which is just under 3 dwelling units per acre, which the medium density residential allows for 4 dwelling units per acre by right. And they are requesting 250 single family and 155 townhomes. And those 250 single family will be split up between 50, 60, and 70 foot wide lots. They are currently proposing to take access directly through those adjacent parcels. So you can see we've got one direct access there, another one here, both of those off of 486, and then 2 over here off of County Road 491. And I would like to point out that the applicant is showing a proposed access point here towards an undeveloped portion of Pine Ridge. There is nothing associated with this project as to, being part of Pine Ridge. That's just a conceptual connection point that they've provided. We did briefly talk about the townhomes. Oh, my apologies. I had the phasing on here. So this is proposed to be done in 3 phases. The first phase would be this western portion over here and the multifamily townhome portion on the northeast. The second phase would be single family located in the center area. And the third phase would be located, it's kind of in the middle, and include the other multifamily portion. Now the townhomes, they are proposing 22-foot wide lots, fee simple lots, each with their own driveway. Staff does have some concern with this. Having driveways that close together could be dangerous. If they can provide a study from a traffic engineer stating that there's going to be no safety hazards, then that could alleviate some of that concern, but you do have comments in there from our engineering staff showing concern with that kind of platted layout. They do also have the option to plat them as one, or to consider this as one cohesive project. They could have internal parking and things like that, and not everybody have their own driveway. So there are some options they could do. And so here you can see those townhome areas. Another deviation they're requesting is 20-foot front setbacks for both the townhome lots and the single-family dwellings. That's pretty consistent with some of these smaller lot developments we've seen recently. For impervious surface ratio, they are requesting, as Mr. Pigeon stated, 70% ISR for the 50-foot wide lots, 65% for the 60-foot wide lots, and 55% for the 70-foot wide lots, with an 80% ISR for the townhome lots, the 22-foot wide proposed townhome lots, and the townhome plats would be 70% ISR plat wide. Staff does have some concern with these ISR calculations being proposed. The medium density residential allows for 50% ISR by right, so going up to 70 and even 80% ISR for some of these parcels seems very excessive for that land use. Some of the other things being requested is offsite signage. And really the only point you can see that is right there, those 2 purple circles next to that entrance on 491. Staff does not support that, having offsite signage for a residential subdivision. And another thing being proposed as part of this is the applicant has requested an allowance of up to a 3% increase in intensity per phase through the minor modification process. So our minor modification process allows for an applicant to request certain modifications under a threshold, and it goes through administratively. Right now, the threshold is 5%, no more than 5% increase in intensity. So if the request for the minor mod of 3% per phase goes through, that's a total of 9% project wide, which would exceed that allowance that's already in the land development code. And staff would not be able to support that. They are also requesting a 15-year termination for this project. This is a very large project. It kind of makes sense. Not everything's going to be able to be done within the 3 years typically allotted for a planned unit development. So that seems seems like a pretty good deviation. Give them time to work on this. The buffers being proposed do seem to meet or exceed land development code standards, especially after the clarification that was submitted right at the quasi-input deadline time. They are proposing a type B landscape buffer where they're abutting other commercial properties, adjacent commercial properties for residential subdivisions. That's what's required. They're also providing type C landscape buffer along 491, and they're providing a landscape buffer between the development and Black Diamond, which there would be no buffer required there by code. They are proposing sidewalks for all the roads, at least on one side of the roadway, some of the multi-use trails, and as Mr. Pigeon stated, some could also support golf carts. They do have central water and sewer available, and the project is compatible with the surrounding area. So you've got the residential subdivision already adjacent to it to the north. You've got a proposed higher density apartment and commercial development to the south. And so this does seem compatible with the area. So the findings are all positive. We do have some suggested conditions. The applicant has provided in their backup material some alternative conditions, and so you can review those as you see fit.
Thank you. Any questions for Joe? Yes.
Joe, we've been calculating ISR project-wide and taking an average. Is that the standard for county staff? Or do we, now they're asking us to calculate ISR in a different way per lot based on the width of the lot. What is the standard?
We've done both ways. So we've had some subdivisions come through where they don't specify as part of the plat. They just default to land development code. And so when those lots are created and somebody comes in for a permit to develop on them, we do ISR at that time of development. We've had some recent subdivision applications come through that requested the ISR be calculated at the improvement plans for the plat. So we've seen it both ways.
Okay.
Any other comments? Yes, Commissioner Facemeyer.
Joe, could you share your view of what the impact will be on traffic in this already busy intersection? I only see one traffic light for ingress and egress to 400 homes, a bunch of retail, potentially medical.
Unfortunately, I can't speak to traffic concerns. We no longer have traffic concurrency. There was not a traffic study submitted as part of this application.
You read my mind.
So
I see traffic as a problem. I think it's a worthy project. I think it's a great location for it. I think traffic is going to be a problem. So if nothing else, that's an editorial comment by Commissioner Facemeyer. The other thing I'd like to get your input on is buffering between this project and the existing Black Diamond. Can we talk about, because I look at the plot plan and it says minimum 20 feet buffer, kind of nondescript. Maybe for those here, those in the audience who are from Black Diamond, maybe you could discuss that a little bit.
Sure. So the applicant didn't specify a buffer type between this project and Black Diamond. Typically with a 20-foot wide buffer, we see that as either a type C or a type D landscape buffer as far as the number of plantings. They didn't really specify, but the land development code states that residential projects adjacent to residential projects really have no buffer requirements. So they are proposing 20 feet of some sort of planting buffer that is not required by code.
Thank you.
And just to jump in a little bit, engineering division's comments do include the traffic signal warrant analysis will be required for connections to County Road 46 and County Road 491. And also at time of permitting, the applicant will need to provide a trip generation analysis to justify the right-of-way width for the proposed right-of-ways. So there's some stuff in there with traffic, a little bit. We haven't actually incorporated that in our conditions because that's required anyway, but we can do so and reference that if you want to make it very clear that those have to be looked at.
I know traffic signals just don't show up one day,
Right, it's
There's
a warrant
process.
analysis that
Yeah.
yeah. So they did suggest that as their possible comments.
Any other comments?
Yeah,
Yes.
I want a little bit of clarification about the, I just got through digging through here. I know I read it, and it's the deviation for the minor modification. Can you tell me what you said again?
Sure. So the land development code in chapter 4 allows for a provision for a minor modification to a plan unit development. And so it's a formal application process, and the request has to meet certain thresholds. If they meet certain thresholds, then it can proceed through the minor modification, which is all internal administrative approvals. If it exceeds those thresholds, then it's considered a major modification and has to go through the PUD process again. So the threshold in Chapter 4 for intensity says that to be considered a minor modification, you get no more than 5% increase in intensity. if you exceed that 5%, that trips it into a major modification that got to go through the PUD again. The deviation being requested is an increase of 3% in intensity per phase. So for this whole project being 3 phases, that's 9% increase in intensity that could therefore be requested as a minor modification and not have to go through the plan unit development process again.
So a difference of 4% of the modification, and we're talking about density.
Yes.
4%, percent of what?
Number of dwellings.
Okay, so 4 times 400 is what? It's 4% of it, so it's, are we talking 16? 16 units total, roughly? Right, isn't that how the math works on that? We're doing Crystal River math again, right? Nobody else wants to help me on that?
It sounds like,
You're on your own, Dave.
4% of 400 is like 16?
sounds like right.
16
Math.
units?
Yes.
Plat-wide.
Understanding that it is a administrative staff decision and does not come before you, and there's no public hearing for
Right.
it. So the code's really clear to give us some leeway, but there's absolutely nothing in the code that says, and you can go over it if you guys approve it. Very uncomfortable with that, taking that process away.
Just to be clear, I'm on the staff's side with that. I was
Yeah,
just
I'm not
trying to
trying to
figure
say-
out
I'm very
what the difference
uncomfortable.
in the number is. It's like 16, it's not, on a project this large, it's not a lot. I mean, I think that they could just make it work.
Right, a minor modification will allow up to 20 units or 5%, whichever is lower. So theoretically, they can get a lot of units more, including your Crystal River 16 for 16.
5% would be 20 times 400 units.
Right.
Right.
So they're already allowed that anyway?
No, they could be allowed that as a minor modification. It is reviewed
In the
in
minor
detail.
modification process, right? Okay,
outside of the
all right.
hearing process.
That makes sense.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Joe. Okay, now we'll try it. At this point in time, we'll open up the hearing to the public. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the application, please step forward. Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Yes, ma'am. Please step forward and state your name. And as a reminder, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, sir, and thank you again for having this portion for public input. My name is Donna Davis. I live at 2341 North His Terrace, which is going to be the neighborhood directly across from what they perceive as entrance F on their diagram. So that's off of 491. We are a subdivision that has no other access other than 491. All I'm asking is that they consider putting some sort of traffic control there, whether it be a traffic light or a circle or something to help us get in and out. Getting on 491 right now at 7 o'clock in the morning with all the school traffic is crazy busy. That's the target is going to add a lot of traffic, as your other commissioner suggested. And then adding all those townhouses, and that's going to be the major entrance for those townhouses, I would suspect, is that that entrance 4, or F, I mean, sorry. So, we're just asking, because we have a lot of elderly people that live back in my subdivision. There's only one house that has kids. Everybody else is, kid-free in that neighborhood. So I'm just asking for something that's going to help us get in and out to get to our services. And then, like you, Mr. Commissioner Bass, I also was curious about how we're going to handle schools. Workforce housing is going to bring a lot of kids to that area. So that's all I had to say. I'm not against, development. I think it's good for the county as long as we're doing it proactively and looking out for everybody in the county.
Thank you for your comments. We
Thank
appreciate
you very
it.
much. I appreciate it.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Seeing none? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition, please step forward. Anyone in opposition? Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. I hope everyone can hear me. My name is Ted Silver. I live in Black Diamond. I'll provide you with my address later. I just have mostly questions. I'm inexperienced in all of this, so if I don't know what ISR means, I hope you'll forgive me. My first question is, are there any this could be for Mr. Pigeon. Are there any other multi-family, multi-dwelling projects or apartments that directly abut either Black Diamond or Pine Ridge currently that exist?
Excuse me, sir, do not address any questions to
Okay.
the applicant. You have to just make a
All right,
presentation
I'm
to
sorry.
us, sir.
Thank you for
Thank
that.
you.
That's my question. So
Okay.
that's number one. Number two, have there been any studies on the impact on wildlife that exist in that area? Any endangered species? Any discussion about where to relocate wildlife? The other question I had was, I didn't hear about the total number of cars and parking spaces that would be with the project that you've already approved for the commercial plus this plus the multifamily. And the reason I ask this is that I've only been a resident here for 9 years, so I'm not a lifer like many of you. One of the reasons that my wife and I came here in retirement was because of the quality of life. We perceived wonderful county with wonderful people and frankly low density existence with lack of air pollutants, traffic, crime, all the things that we had seen in other places we had lived. And I understand development is a fact of life and we can't stop it, but sometimes we can ameliorate it to the point where it's more compatible with our existence. I personally am against any multifamily housing project that abuts these properties. I will go on record as saying that. I think that has a negative and deleterious effect on property values. And that's another question I have. What would be, do we have a study anywhere that shows the impact of these higher density existences on the property values, which to my understanding are probably the most valuable properties in the county, in Citrus County? And if these properties decline, will the property assessor be aware of the impact that would have on their tax revenue? So I guess that's the last thing I wanted to say was the health impact. I'm a retired physician. There are numerous studies that have proven that air particulates from higher density cars and traffic reduce life expectancy. They cause respiratory disease, heart disease, cancer, morbidity, mortality, and death. And so to the local area people that exist in this region, I think they would obviously be concerned about it. And I understand my time is up. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please make sure you fill out the yellow form. And also our first speaker needs to fill out a yellow form and present it to our secretary, please.
She did.
Okay, thank you. Any other people wishing to speak in opposition? Anyone else in opposition? Anyone else in opposition? Seeing none. Mr. Pigeon, any closing comments?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just one clarification to staff, and I know staff didn't have time to read or perhaps remember the supplemental comment response information we gave to staff. We did provide a buffer type B3 modified for the north boundary, and we do define what that is. That is a 20-foot wide buffer with a hedge and 3 trees for every 100 feet. So it is defined as a type B, but it's modified just slightly. And we have some color pictures, but we didn't have a chance to get them to staff to be able to present what that buffer looks like. But perhaps if we get past this stage, Board of County Commission will see some color photos. And I appreciate all the comments that Mr. Silver made and concerns. And being a resident or near resident or working in the county since 1969, I've seen an awful lot of changes in Citrus County. In fact, this project will take away my golf course that I played from the top of the hill at Black Diamond, 1970s, where we would play pasture golf all through that field that we are now turning into a commercial subdivision. So I've been there and seen it, done it, but I'm trying to do the best to make it really good for the community and the future residents of this county. So to answer the question, as far as ISR, he said, is there any other multi-family projects that abut Black Diamond? I'm not aware of any specific multifamily projects that abut Black Diamond, but I am aware of the original Brown Center Community Care Psychiatric Hospital that abuts directly onto Black Diamond. Now it's the VA clinic that abuts Black Diamond. and there are other commercial entities along the site. So no specific multifamily that abuts Black Diamond. But I can tell you, having had lots of conversations with golf community builders, designers, and operators, all the successful golf courses in Florida typically have a multifamily component in and around and within the golf community. It also has a hotel component or a play and stay, stay and play, or at least something like that. That's the survivor comments that I can make for golf courses in Florida and pretty much around the country for them to survive healthily throughout. The answer to the question as far as is there an impact of wildlife, there will be an impact of the gopher tortoises. We've had studies done on the site, and those particular studies have identified gopher tortoise. It's pretty common in Citrus County. So there will be some relocation of those tortoises. We are maintaining at least 20% open space. They migrate to those open spaces and live within those open spaces. So yes, we're very attuned to the impact of the wildlife. And as far as the question regarding vehicle traffic, we did the current zoning of MDR 4 units per acre versus what's proposed. There's actually a decrease of the actual total traffic by about 205 vehicles per hour less with this design than what's originally and currently approved for zoning. Can't answer the air quality, not an expert on that. And there's been no studies at this particular time in terms of housing values. That would have to be done by independent appraisers. There's no other questions?
Very good. Thank you very much,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Appreciate it. And with that, we'll return to the board for comments, questions, discussion, and possible action. Anyone would like to start? Commissioner Worthington.
I will just start. Dr. Silver, I just wanted to also address some of the things you brought up. Welcome to Citrus County. You've been here for 9 years, and you said it was low density. And that may be true, but it was undeveloped. When you look at your area and the zoning around, and like Mr. Pigeon just talked about, by right, that area is zoned MDR, which is medium density residential, and they can put 4 dwelling units per acre. Requesting a PUD, they are allowed to go up to 8 dwelling units per acre. So in this project that we're looking at here, they are they're going for less density than they could have possibly. So I just wanted to point that out. Traffic. I think the traffic is a concern, especially on 491, because it's not necessarily the project's problem, but rather it's a county problem, infrastructure. I was going to ask Ms. Lynn, when did the county start the process of widening 491 from 44 to 486? Do you know?
The process of actually seeing the work being done, I believe that the intersection started probably in 2017. I was going to say 2017, that you actually saw some things happening. But it was many years before that they started property acquisitions and other things.
Yeah, so they've been working on widening that for several years, and we all know that 491 needs to continue to be widened all the way to 200 at some point. And when we look at that process in and of itself, you know, with eminent domain and takings and things, holding that process up has been taking years and years. You know, so for me, the traffic is a concern. However, it is a good project. I'm not in favor of the deviation for ISR. I'm willing to support the project with the conditions that staff has provided.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I would just say that I'm in favor of the application, but I would agree with their 70-foot, 60-foot, 50-foot lot ISRs calculations based on Joe's comment that we do have other neighborhoods, and we've seen some of these 50-foot wide lots on proposed developments here in the past. And the reason why I would say that this is a little bit different and we're doing multiple things is because this is a fairly large project that doesn't already exist in Citrus County. So I think that we should probably take that into consideration and utilize the opportunity to make the best project possible. If that means we need to make a couple of deviations here or there, which I did have a question about that too, though, and I just remembered it because are we going the entire project is 65% impervious, but they want to be able to, within that 65%, utilize the 55, 65, 70% on the townhome lots only. Is that how we're interpreting this?
No, I don't think so.
No.
Residential.
No.
So the condition was written that it would be 65% ISR plat-wide rather than for individual lots. So the way they have it set up, their proposal is that ISR would be per individual lot, and it would include the townhome lots if they are platted as fee simple as being 80% ISR. So there's also a stipulation in their master plan that says, or that allows for a reduction of down to 75% of the width for those properties if it's on like an extreme curve or something like that. So there was some confusion as to how that ISR would play out. In other words, if at the setback line they're supposed to be 50, 60, and 70 feet wide, and they're on a curve and they have that stipulation, they could be reduced to 75% of that. So what would that then be? Would that, if a 70-foot wide lot ended up being 63 feet wide, would that still be a 70-foot wide lot or a 60-foot wide lot? So there was some question as to that, but I think the intent was it would be whatever the width of that lot is at the setback line. So, but the 70% ISR for a residential lot in medium density residential and the 80% for a townhome lot in medium density residential seemed excessive. We've seen some higher, 60 and 65%, but those were kind of high.
Any other comments, Commissioner Bramlett?
No, I'm just sort of taking it all in. I want to hear what some of you guys say.
Well, may I? The reason
Yes.
why I said I didn't support it is because, and you said this, Commissioner Bramlett, like we don't have development like that in Citrus County, and to me, I'm saying thank goodness because, this is something that we would see, maybe traveling in other areas where you have the zero lot line and houses are so close that you could basically reach out your window and touch your neighbor's hand with, you know what I mean? Like, so we had setbacks and ISR and those types of things for a reason. It's a community development standard and an aesthetic that we would like to see in Citrus County versus, allowing these zero lot lines and houses to be so close. That's why I wasn't in favor of it.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. Dixon,
Yes.
I asked this question before, I'm just gonna ask it again just to have it on the record. With the addition of this property, are there any concerns with the school board with additional children attending our schools?
Well, our next school's probably gonna be right next door to the YMCA, which is right next to this project. We are preparing for it. We need funding, and this is a case in point of why you need impact fees.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments? The ISR is bothering me a little bit too. I think the idea of doing that on a total plat basis makes more sense than trying to get into these individuals, because I think you said, Joe, where does that measurement begin? Is a 60-foot lot now going to be treated as a 50-foot lot because of the setbacks? So I would rather see the whole parcel done on a overall basis versus an individual lot. I think it's just going to be less confusing for all of the reviewers on the project and make it a simpler project for everyone. So I don't like the pick and choose column that is offered to us at this point in time. And also that 80% density on the townhouses, that seems a little bit excessive to me. You know, we're adding a lot of impervious surface by doing that, and I don't think that it's necessary. Again, we have a clean slate, so I think we should try to make it the best project at the end of the day. I think overall the project is great, but I think it just needs a little bit of tweaking. So that's my view on it. Any other comments or points of discussion?
I think regarding the traffic,
Yes.
there's nothing you're gonna do about it. Right now, you've got, at that intersection, you've got 2 through lanes in each direction, with 2 left turn lanes in each direction, and 1 right turn lane in each direction. I'm not gonna get anything bigger than that, and it's going to be widened between 486 and 490 and 44 even further. And again, if it goes up to 200, which it has to go eventually, it's needed, this is going to be a bottleneck. And by adding 700 homes or whatever plus retail, it's only going to get worse. I don't think there's anything to be done about it, unless you start carving off the thing and put 3 right turn lanes or worse. Anyway, just a thought.
Right.
Just to jump on that just a little bit, based on all the discussions about traffic, suggest an additional condition that incorporates the comments from Engineering Division. They're on page 3 of the staff report. They do give some flexibility for discussions and for engineered studies, but they include traffic signal warrant analysis, trip generation analysis for right-of-way width, some crosswalks and some of the multi-use trail crossings, etc. So we didn't specify those because they're in the Land Development Code, but I think calling them out specifically is probably a good idea as well.
You took the wind out of my sails.
I'm so sorry. And also then, based on Mr. Pigeon's discussions, it sounds like the buffer condition number 6, would change from a type C buffer, otherwise buffers are as shown on the master plan, or as submitted, or as indicated on the resubmittal date stamped November 25th, 2022. He talked about the revised buffer that he submitted, so condition 6 would change slightly.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to go back to the ISR.
Yes.
So if we decide that we want just a number instead of each size lot, I'd like to discuss what number we would like.
Well, the MDR standard, if I'm not mistaken, is 50%.
55.
50? So,
And the staff is recommending 65
right.
in their condition.
So I would say we'd be better off going 65 or down, not using the lots. So if we say 60 or 65, we know the overall project is not going to have more of an ISR number.
Correct. Yes, Mr. Pigeon, you want to?
Yes, just a comment or two, because I want to make sure I have clarification on staff's comment. They said on a plat by plat basis, so we plat phase 1, lots of acreage, huge drainage retention areas, pretty good buffer zones, and they say 65%. So I said, great. So I go and I want to build the first lot. I can put 80% impervious on that lot if I want to, because the whole subdivision is way less than 65. I can put 80% on every lot in that first phase, because the whole subdivision is less than 65. I go to the next piece and the next piece, and I can just play that game. Although I'm not sure how staff can track when it's 65% or less. What we're saying is every building permit that comes into the building department would say this particular lot has 55, 65, or 70. It's easy for staff to figure that out. We just want to understand that we wanted the flexibility to be able to say when we plat just a piece of residential that is just 50-foot wide lots, and it may be a 30-lot piece or it may be a 50-lot piece, that particular one, because it isn't connected to the retention pond or isn't connected to a buffer, it may only have the ability to have 70%, not 65. That's all. We can go either way. we can go with staff. I'm not sure how staff's gonna keep track of the 65%. And then you say, well, why do we have ISR to begin with? It's really just two reasons, real reasons. One is drainage, to make sure you have enough drainage to take care of that much impervious area with runoff. And the second is, heat generation and the size of the rooftops and things from just an overall neighborhood appearance. We want a tight, more consolidated development area so we can leave 20-foot buffers and leave 20-foot open space and have a different affordability type in Citrus County. That's all I'm just saying. We can stick with staff's comment, but I'm not sure what they're really saying in their condition. I don't know that they really understand what could happen. We're just trying to avoid that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I mean, I would just say that it's 65% of the total square foot of the project. And he's talking about it per plat, per phase, but the entire plat is the entire plat. Am I not mistaken? This entire project is the plat,
Well,
not the phase.
he can plat it in phases, and we were trying to help when we say per plat. We're trying to actually help them because it's a big project, and they may only do 15 houses at a time for all we know. So they could basically at improvement plans they have to show that building out to all the maximum setbacks, they're going to still meet that ISR. Or we can go lot by lot by lot and do that. It's a little difficult on smaller lots, absolutely. I think it's hard to include the townhomes in the same breath as the single family. They're just so different from each other. The townhomes are 22 foot wide, so.
That's why I think that those need to be broken out.
Agreed. But the per plat was trying to help them, frankly. Our permitting can go either way. It's harder for the engineer and improvement plans to do the plat wide, but then when permits comes in, we just do the maximum setbacks because it's already been calculated. They have to design their lot area based on that.
Correct, I get that.
Yeah.
But then how do we make this condition break out the townhome portion of it and make it different? Because you're 100% correct, it's a different lot. It's not going to be able to meet the ISR.
Right, so condition 10 would be the single family lots can have a maximum of 65 or whatever you chose. And then the townhomes, he's got the ISR shall be calculated based on
80% is what I wrote.
Right. He said ISR for an individual lot and plat area of 70%. It should be one or the other, whichever, or neither. Whatever you think is appropriate for the townhome ISR. Remember, these are 22 foot wide lots, so ISR is going to be taken up like that.
Right.
I don't know how they're going to develop that at even less than 80. But we don't see 22 footers.
Right, so I would be okay with that condition, the way she just reworded it for the 65% on the single family and the 80% on the townhomes. That helps them get away with what they're trying to do here, and I think that wouldn't be, the majority of the project is SFR. It's not townhomes.
Right.
So,
Yes.
we're not paving paradise, for lack of a better term.
Right. So you're saying 65% for the entire development, not just by phase. That was an issue that was brought up.
Plat wide is what Ms. Katu just stated.
Right, we can do lot wide. Either way, I mean, plat wide is done with the engineer. Lot wide's easier for permitting, but it doesn't matter. Also, yeah, Joe's right. We added the engineering conditions in there. I also would add that they need to demonstrate that the 22 foot wide lots, if this is approved, do meet traffic safety standards by a traffic engineer. That's not actually spelled out there. That's just something verbally they've expressed.
Right, and he agreed. They agreed that they could get that engineering.
It's not actually spelled out in the report, and it should have been.
So we would end up with 18 conditions then.
You can never have too many conditions. Yes.
17 would be the information that engineering brought up, and 18 would be the.
I think it would be part of the same condition. It would be part of the same condition.
Okay, so 17 conditions.
Right.
Okay.
It's a long engineering condition.
Okay.
So based on what Mr. Brownman said, if there's consensus, then number 10 would change to single family units can utilize a maximum 65% to be calculated on a plat-wide basis or lot basis if you want, and 80% for townhomes on a plat-wide basis. So that does give the applicant some flexibility. They're going to have to build out to the setbacks and demonstrate at platting I'm meeting 65% for these 15 lots, 30 lots, whatever they choose for that plat.
Okay.
They have to work a little harder, the engineer, but it's doable.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if we were to do it ISR on a lot per lot basis, if we did, I see what the applicant has suggested, but if we did 50-foot lot, 65%, 60-foot or what, at 65 at 60 and then 70 or wider at 55 or something of that nature. 70 seems excessive to me, but I know Mr. Pigeon said there was a reason for it, but I don't remember what it was. But 70 seems excessive. But if it's easier for permitting,
It doesn't matter. They're good at their job, but so you're suggesting stepping down the ISR. So the 70 would be 55 still, but the 60-foot or wider would be 60, and the 50-foot or wider would be 65 instead of 70. Kind of stepping them down, and still the 80 on the townhomes.
Okay. Is everyone on the?
No, I think it would just stay what we just talked about, the 65 on the SFR. It's, in my opinion, this is what, listen, I mean, we're, like we all said, we're here batting the ball around. They'll hear our conversation and they'll do what they want.
Right.
So that's where I'm at with that. I say 80% on the townhome lots, give them the flexibility, 65% plat wide on the SFR. Done. Run the numbers, put your houses in. It doesn't matter. They can go 80% on a lot if they want, as long as they're, or I mean, as long as they're within the 65% ISR total plat wide. I think there's flexibility. My point is there's flexibility in there, built already in there in that option for them to be able to massage and move things around and make it work.
I agree with you, Mr. Bramlett. I think that with a little bit of creative engineering, they can make it work.
Correct.
Any other comments? Can we have a motion from someone?
For the purpose of a motion,
Yes.
The Planning and Development Commission finds application number CPA AAPUD-22-18 consistent with the Citrus County Comprehensive Plan and the Citrus County Land Development Code, and that this board recommends approval with the conditions as talked about ad nauseum of the application to the Board of County Commissioners based upon the evidence and testimony presented and the staff report and conclusions regarding this petition. And then I would say if we need to rehash these conditions again, just so everybody's 100% clear, I'm okay with that, unless the applicant knows where we've already landed.
Okay. We have a first from Commissioner Bram.
I second that.
also it's PUD dash.
Right. We'll just clarify the application number. It's PUD 2209.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There's
Yep, I have that
no CPAs and
written.
no 08s. That's all right. You're good.
Yep, I had that written
What
down
you're
here.
talking about.
Okay, so we have a
It's
first
late.
from Commissioner Brownlet and a second from Commissioner Facemeyer. Does anybody want to rehear the modified conditions?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, condition 1 stays the same. They did not resubmit a master plans, so that is the same. Condition number 2, central water and sewer stays. Condition number 3, stormwater requirements stays. Condition number 4, tree preservation stays. Condition number 5, it sounded like there was consensus for not the deviation from non-residential for the townhomes. Condition number 6, a type C buffer shall be required between the multifamily and single-family developments. Otherwise, buffers shall be as shown on the master plan or as submitted or as reflected on the resubmittal date stamped received November 25th, 2022. Condition number 7 stays that is subject to signage within the LDC and cannot be off-site. Condition 8 is landscaping has to meet Florida-friendly standards. Condition number 9, they must demonstrate provision for active rec and required open space. Condition number 10, the single-family lots can utilize a maximum 65% impervious surface to be calculated on a plat-wide basis rather than for individual lots, and the townhome area can utilize a maximum 80% impervious surface ratio to be calculated on a plat-wide basis. Condition number 11 is exactly the same. Front setbacks are 20, side and rear are 5 foot. Corner lots are proposed as 10 foot on the master plan. Condition 12, sidewalks shall be installed at the time of platting on at least one side of the roadway. Condition 13, for the modified cul-de-sac design, the applicant will need to demonstrate it. They can accommodate turning movements for a garbage or fire truck. Condition number 14, will terminate within 15 years of the date of approval. Condition number 15, where standards are not specified, LDC. Condition number 16, minor modifications may be approved. Not with the extra condition for minor modifications. And we also had the additional condition for engineering. The access management standards as outlined in the land development code must be met as per the engineering division, and those bullet lists on page 3, which includes the traffic analysis, et cetera, will be listed there, including a engineered traffic safety study to confirm the validity of the the safety of the 22-foot wide lots.
Thank you.
I am ready to call it a day, yes.
With that, we have a first by Commissioner Bramlett, second by Commissioner Facemeyer. We have the modified conditions. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
And Commissioners, and for the public, these are scheduled for the January 24th County Commission meeting, both this one and the 2 applications that you heard before you today, the other ones.
Any other comments from staff?
I would say happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and we'll see y'all in January. Oh, you do not have packets for your January meeting. We just have not copied them yet. We're planning on mailing them to you. If anyone does not want it mailed, we'll try to work out some kind of arrangement to get it to you. Okay?
All right. As Joanne said, happy holidays to everybody. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you very much. Motion carries.